Chapter 381, All troublemakers will be left behind. William traveled for 2 days before arriving in the town where he had saved Matthew and Leah from the members of the organization that the Crown Prince had sent to capture them. It was the nearest town to Lant that had a teleport gate he could use to reach the capital. Naturally, William didn't enter the town using his flying carriage. He had ordered Dave to land 2 miles away from the town where they would travel by foot. Lionheart, the Wyvern, as well as the Lamassus that accompanied William, entered the Thousand Beast domain. Since he knew that the members of the organization were the ones in control of the Helan Kingdom, he didn't want to attract any unwanted attention. He planned to go to the capital city, Gladiolus, and reunite with EST and Isaac. There, they would form a plan about how to deal with the organization and the Crown Prince who had betrayed their kingdom. Several children wandered the streets looking for something to eat. After the adults had turned to statues, all of them were left to fend for themselves. The same thing was happening to all of the settlements in the southern continent. If not for the fact that the heirs of the ruling nobles had returned to their territories, things might have escalated beyond anyone's control. Just like Matthew and Leah, who had been trained to oversee their lands, the other heirs also took action. They gathered the survivors to form teams that would handle the hunting of food, cooking, and other necessities that would give their lives some sort of normality. Even so, some places were worse than others, just like this town in the countryside. It seems that the heir of the town's mayor had died during the dungeon outbreak, leaving no one to handle the aftermath and lead the survivors during this time of need. William saw several children sitting in front of their houses while holding their stomachs in hunger. Dave, who had once been a commoner, took pity on them and offered them his own food to alleviate their hunger. However, no matter how good his intentions were, it brought about unexpected results. Several children, who saw him giving away food to others, ran towards him and begged him for food. Their loud voices were heard by others nearby, which also increased the number of children asking for food to eat. Conrad's expression became grim as he saw his friend being swarmed by teenagers who were older than them demanding that Dave give them all of the food in his possession. When Dave said that he had nothing more to give, the teenagers snatched the food that the chubby boy had given to the younger kids he had seen first. This made Dave very angry and soon a brawl, consisting of several teenagers ganging up on the chubby boy, started. Conrad wanted to help, but was held at bay by William. "It's going to be fine," William said as he held Conrad's arm firmly. "Let Dave handle this." Conrad frowned and reluctantly obeyed William's order. He watched the brawl with a serious expression with the intention of helping Dave at the first sign of weakness. Although their numbers were greater, Dave was no pushover. He had survived the dungeon outbreak as well as several other life and death battles. How could a group of ordinary teenagers beat him in a fight? 5 minutes later, the teenagers that started the fight lay on the ground unconscious. Dave didn't hurt them too much because they were just civilians, and not trained warriors. After the fight ended, the children who numbered in the hundreds looked at Dave in fear and admiration. None of them moved away, because there was no place for them to go. It had been several weeks since the adults had turned into statues, and almost all of the food they had was now gone. They were only barely able to survive by drinking water, but that wouldn't last for long. "Sir, what should we do?" Dave asked. "Should we leave them all behind?" William sighed internally as he looked at the hundreds of children that had gathered around them. The surviving children in this town were almost 1,000, and the red-headed boy had no idea on how he could help them all. "Let's take them with us to Gladiolus," Conrad proposed. "The capital may have the resources to support them for the time being." Dave gave William a pleading gaze. He also wanted to save the children who were starving in this town that was located in the countryside. "Very well," William agreed. He then stepped forward and raised his voice. "Listen, all of you. I am a knight of the kingdom and serve directly under the king. All those who want to eat food can follow me to the capital." The children's ears perked up when they heard the word food and looked at William with expectant gazes. "Naturally, I will only take the obedient ones," William stated. "All troublemakers will be left behind. How about us? Can we come too?" One of the teenagers who had fought Dave earlier regained consciousness. The others were also starting to stir and looked at William with sorrowful expressions. They knew that they did a bad thing. Even so, they only did it out of desperation. They hoped that William would forgive them and take them as well to the capital of Gladiolus where there was food to eat. "I will allow it," William said firmly. "However, I will not accept any other wrong actions coming from any of you. Do I make myself clear?" "Yes." The teenagers felt that they were given a new lease of life and hurriedly agreed to William's condition. Some of the children didn't know if they should go because their parents' statues were still inside their homes. However, William told them that their parents were safe. He added that his own relatives had also turned into statues, but they were not in any immediate danger. Using his charisma, the half-elf convinced the children that their parents would be sad if they were to die of hunger before the curse was lifted. William assured them that the curse would automatically be dispelled in the future, which made the children sigh in relief. "Urchito, show yourself," William ordered. A portal appeared behind him. Suddenly a giant, white ox, stepped out of the portal which made the children scream in fear. "Do not worry. He is a guardian beast that protects our kingdom," William shouted in order to calm the children who had panicked at the appearance of the giant beast. "He will ensure that all of you will safely reach the capital. So, you don't have to be afraid. Just follow my orders." Urchito wanted to retort that he wasn't a guardian beast of the Helan Kingdom. However, he knew what William wanted to accomplish by summoning him, so he didn't make him lose face in front of the children. After the initial shock had passed, the children became more orderly because although they only half believed William's declaration of being a knight of the kingdom, the appearance of Urchito gave them hope. The Urchito was a giant minotaur that stood on 2 legs. It looked so strong and powerful that the children looked at it in awe and fear. This allowed William and his 2 knights to lead them all to the teleport gates. William summoned one of his high-quality magic crystal from this 1000-beast domain in order to power up the teleport gate and allow the hundreds of children to cross it. Dave and Conrad had gone ahead and waited in the capital where the connecting gate was located. William and Ian stayed behind to ensure that all the children were safely sent to the capital of Gladiolus. The system had already done a full sweep of the town and didn't find any members of the organization. However, it found several children that were too weak to leave their homes and join the migration to the capital. William summoned the Circops monkeys in order to retrieve these weakened children and carry them towards the teleport gate. The sky was already starting to turn dark when the last batch of children, who were carried by the Circops monkeys, crossed through the gate. It took William 9 hours to finish this town-wide evacuation. Although this task delayed him from doing his mission, his heart was at peace. He knew that he would feel very guilty if he left these children behind to fend off for themselves when he could have helped them. The red-headed boy asked the system to do one final sweep of the town to ensure that no children were being left behind. After another full sweep of the surroundings, the system gave the all-clear signal, which meant that everyone had been accounted for. Only after hearing the system's confirmation did William and Ian step into the portal that would lead them to the capital. As William stepped into the gates, his determination to overthrow the organization became stronger. He would not allow an organization that could start a war and sacrifice millions of lives to have their way with the Helan Kingdom. Chapter 382, The True Meaning of Jealousy. William had temporarily taken the children of the town to the Helan Royal Academy. The sudden arrival of hundreds of children in the capital had caused a disturbance among the local kids who were being managed by the sons of the Prime Minister of the kingdom. When the Crown Prince was taken to prison, Connor decided to temporarily assign the Prime Minister's 19-year-old son to handle the affairs of the kingdom. To his surprise, the candidate he chose was quite capable and used his circle of friends, who had also grown up in the capital, to handle the needs of the survivors. Brendan Schwartz, the Prime Minister's son, was groomed to take his father's place as soon as he retired from his position. He had single-handedly kept the capital of Gladiolus afloat amidst the chaos that had descended among the children within the capital of the Helan Kingdom. Naturally, there were also members of the organization inside the capital, but none of them paid attention to the sudden appearance of more children in the city. Connor had ordered them to take the treasures of the kingdom and evacuate the city as soon as possible. As his last act of kindness, Connor left the granaries of the kingdom untouched, which Brendan used to help feed the survivors. The leader of the organization was still on the fence about what he should do with Crown Prince Lionel and his brother, Prince Rufus. Callum proposed that they take the 2 princes to be used as hostages, if ever an opportunity arose. Connor thought that this was a sound proposal because even though the 2 princes had betrayed their kingdom, they were still the princes of the nation. They hadn't lost their value and could be used as bargaining chips in the future. Aside from the remaining members of the organization who were tasked with disabling the traps and protection of the treasury, the rest had already moved to their headquarters where the statues of King Noah and the important nobles of the kingdom were stored for safekeeping. Connor was using this brief moment of peace to use all the manpower in his disposal to search for the monument that had disappeared from under his grasp. The corner of Dave's and Conrad's lips twitched when they saw Urchito mixing the rice gruel in the 3-meter-wide yin-yang cauldron using a giant ladle that William had just crafted using alchemy. Earlier, William asked Dave and Conrad to grab the giant pots that were in the kitchen to cook rice gruel for the children that they had brought with them. Since it was already evening, he asked the kids, who knew how to cook, to help with the food preparations as well. After securing several pots and pans from the kitchen of the Royal Academy, the cooking process began. Just like the city of Gladiolus, the Royal Academy had its own food reserves that it used to feed the children who were studying inside their institution. When Urchito saw the yin-yang cauldron, it mentioned something in passing that piqued William's interest. I wonder what rice gruel would taste like if it was cooked using the yin-yang cauldron. That was what Urchito had muttered when William was about to put it away. After hearing this casual question, William also became curious. He even wondered what a rice gruel would taste like if it was cooked using the yin-yang cauldron and the flames of purification. Because of this, the two decided to conduct an experiment. The one who would cook the rice gruel would be Urchito, while William focused on controlling the flames using the flames of purification. Ian didn't do anything and simply watched from the side. He didn't specialize in cooking because that task was left to his twin, Isaac. Mohawk, the leader of the giant apes, was busy throwing in some pieces of meat, and other seasonings, for William's instructions. The three were so focused on their task that they didn't notice Dave's and Conrad's presence. Both boys were already holding a bowl of rice porridge each and looking at this scene with dumbfounded expressions. Naturally, it didn't take long before William noticed them and invited the two to join them for dinner. How are the children? William asked while he decreased the power of the flames. They're currently eating, Dave answered. So far, the commander's threat worked and none of them are causing trouble. William nodded. The reason he had summoned Urchito in front of the kids was to scare them and prevent them from doing anything bad. This deterrence worked and all of them were behaving properly. After they finish eating, bring them to the public pool, William commented after pondering for a while. Separate them by genders. I will have the Ingrati birds and the Circops monkeys guard the girls' area to prevent any boys from causing mischief. Dave and Conrad nodded their heads in agreement. The children who had been left behind were like homeless people who hadn't bathed for days. Naturally, there were those who cared about hygiene, but since the town was located in the countryside, not everyone prioritized cleanliness over food. This was very true during these dark and difficult times. It's done, Urchito said after stirring the ladle one last time. It then proceeded to grab the bowls that William had prepared beforehand and started to pour rice gruel into them. The first bowl he handed to William, the second it handed to Mohawk, the third it gave it to itself. The three ate at almost the same time and their expressions changed drastically. Delicious. William stuttered as he ate more of the rice gruel that they had just cooked. It seems that our experiment is a success, Urchitu agreed as he ate from the big bowl that William had made for him. Dave and Conrad ate their rice gruel hurriedly. After emptying their bowls, they asked if they could try some of the porridge that their comrades had cooked. Go ahead, William said with confidence. Dang, I should really get a chef job class. Maybe it will taste even better if I equip that profession while cooking. If the god of alchemists saw that his precious yin-yang cauldron, replica, was being used to cook rice gruel, he would definitely throw a tantrum and whack William's head in anger. Lily, Issei, and David were already laughing in the Temple of the Gods when they saw this scene. The alchemist god was also a member of the neutral faction and one of the richest gods in the temple. All of his pills would be auctioned in the god shop and the chosen candidates of the gods would bid, using their hard-earned god points, to get his miraculous pills that would give them power beyond their wildest imaginations. After William and the rest finished eating, he cleaned his yin-yang cauldron using his water magic and stored it back inside his storage ring. He was just about to go to his room in the Solaris dormitory with Ian when he saw a familiar face walking towards him. You sure know how to create a ruckus, EST said as he looked at William with a fed-up expression. Instead of seeing me first, you brought these kids to the academy without saying a word. If not for the fact that Isaac was scouting the city for news, I wouldn't have known that you had arrived in the capital. William scratched his head as he walked towards the handsome boy who was giving him the "you're gonna sleep on the floor tonight" glare. The half-elf lightly cleared his throat as he gave his explanation. Actually, I planned to see you first, but the circumstances didn't give me the opportunity to do that. William sighed. The evacuation of the town took a lot of time. I planned to look for you tomorrow, but who would have thought that you missed me so much that you came here personally? William flicked his hair in arrogance as he gave EST a dazzling smile. By the way, have you seen Wendy? William asked. I've missed her, too, and, if possible, I want to sleep with her Tony. Ian, who was standing beside him, pinched his waist in irritation, while EST stepped forward and pulled on his ears. Clearly, both of them were very dissatisfied with William's choice of words. How could he possibly look for Wendy when the two of them were already here in front of him? The pitiful half-elf had been dragged away by the two jealous boys, leaving the dumbfounded Isaac, Dave, Conrad, Urchitu, and Mohawk behind. That night, William understood what jealousy truly was. Inside his spiritual world, two beautiful girls made sure that the red-headed boy wouldn't commit the same mistake again in the future as they performed the union of souls, to help the annoying half-elf speed up the recovery of his sea of consciousness. Meanwhile, in the Armstrong Duchy. Wendy, what's wrong? Spencer asked when he saw his twin sister suddenly look in the direction of the city of Gladiolus. Wendy frowned as if deep in thought. She didn't understand how or why, but somehow, she thought that she heard William's voice call out her name. Nothing, big brother, Wendy replied as she returned to the task of reading the documents that were submitted by the retainers of their duchy. She thought that she was imagining things because she wanted to see William so badly. Every night, Wendy dreamed of the place called Asgard where her adult self lived together with her husband, Will. Wendy was very jealous of her adult self. Not only did the Valkyrie Wendy look mature and charming, she was also someone that took the initiative. The Will in her dreams would sometimes resist her advances, but her overwhelming strength would render him helpless. Wendy would often wake up hot and bothered in the morning after the husband and wife had shared a steamy night together. Deep inside, she wished that there would come a time when William and her would really, truly, be married. Not solely in her dreams, but in reality as well. Chapter 383, Ambitions End Part 1. The next day, William was about to do his own investigation to gather news in the city in regards to the movements of the organization when he felt a very familiar presence within the academy. It didn't take long for William to identify who this presence belonged to and he felt both shock and joy at the discovery. Immediately, he headed towards the garden in the first-year magic division where he recently had a face-off with Carter. It's good to see that you are safe, Fourth Master, William said. His tone was laced with relief and happiness knowing that one of the most dependable veterans of Lant wasn't affected by the continental spell that had turned everyone into statues. Ezio hummed as he patted William's shoulder. You did well. Among William's masters, Ezio was very straightforward and didn't like sugar-coating his words. This was why William was quite happy to receive praise coming from the man who always walked in the shadows. You're going to gather information, I presume? Ezio asked. William nodded, yes, Fourth Master. Very well. I will also share the information that I have gathered while staying here in the capital, Ezio stated. First off, Crown Prince Lionel and Prince Rufus are no longer in the capital. They were taken by the members of the organization to their headquarters in the northeast. William listened attentively to Ezio's explanation. Frankly, he had wanted to give the Crown Prince a good slap on the face for trying to kidnap his big sister and big brother during their return to Lant. Unfortunately, he had missed his chance because they were no longer in the capital. Ezio explained that the organization had also started to pull out from the capital and were all gathering at their headquarters. He had tried to gain some information by capturing some of the members of the organization, but none of them knew anything. All they knew was that their leader was recalling all of them without giving any further explanation. After telling him about the current state of the organization, Ezio returned to the domestic problems that the kingdom was currently facing. Brendan Schwartz is a very capable young man. He was able to handle the immediate problem within the capital, which was the food shortage. Ezio praised the son of the Prime Minister due to his ability to quickly solve the problems that had propped up after the adults had turned into statues. However, because he is very capable, he has started to have thoughts about this kingdom. After the two princes had been taken away, he thought of himself as the de facto regent of the Helan kingdom. Since he is the son of the Prime Minister, he indeed has the authority to give out orders while the members of the royal family are not present in the capital. William scoffed because he had already seen how greedy people could be when they gained power and influence. You mean to say he is planning to become the king's regent, fourth master? Exactly. Ezio nodded. The leader of the organization sent one of his subordinates to inform Brendan that they would pass the control of the Helan kingdom into his very capable hands temporarily, while they handled some important matters. I think this is where Brendan's plan to become the new ruler of this nation started to bloom. William sighed and scratched his head. The last thing he wanted to deal with was an ambitious mouse who thought that it could play king while the cat was away. Ezio looked at the young man with a smile on his face. Although the time he had spent with William was short, he knew that the red-headed boy had already formulated a plan about how to deal with the son of the Prime Minister. Brendan sat on the throne of the Helan kingdom with a smug expression on his face. If he had done this during normal times, he would have immediately been charged with treason and sent to the gallows to die. However, right now, no one in the kingdom had the authority to make him pay for this crime. The organization had already taken away the two princes, leaving the throne unattended. As for the youngest prince, traces of his whereabouts were nowhere to be found. Although this raised a concern towards his plan of becoming the regent of the kingdom, he didn't think of it as a big deal. Prince Ernest was just a child and posed no threat to him. One of the lackeys standing by his side smiled as he looked at the imposing throne in front of him. He had seen this throne several times in the past, but he had never seen it this close before. Lord Brendan, it seems that the fate of the Helan kingdom is now on your hands, the lackey said with a flattering smile on his face. If there's anything that you need, just tell me. I, the House of Caldwell, will follow it without fail. The other lackeys that had become part of Brendan's small circle had also raised their voice to proclaim their allegiance. Brendan smiled and nodded his head as if he was indeed a king who was showing benevolence to his subjects. Your loyalty will not be forgotten, Brendan stated crisply. As long as I sit on this throne, your families will prosper. Thank you, Your Excellency. Lord Brendan is truly magnanimous. A prodigy among prodigies. Words of flattery fell like rain and Brendan basked on it with a benevolent smile on his face. The dozens of noble heirs that had pledged their allegiance to him may not be the heads of the ducal families, but they were influential families nevertheless. Sons of marquises, viscounts, and barons were fighting against each other in order to get into his good graces. Brendan allowed them to flatter him for the sake of raising his ego. Suddenly, the doors of the throne room swung open and a red-headed boy, holding a wooden staff, swaggered in as if he owned the place. Brendan frowned because he recognized who the uninvited guest was. How could he possibly not recognize the youngest knight commander of the Helan kingdom? He then gave the red-headed boy a kind smile as he stood up from the throne. Lord William, it is good to see that you have recovered from your injuries. Brendan nodded his head to acknowledge William's rank and position. Right now, the kingdom is in a state of strife. Foreigners have invaded the land and the peace of our kingdom is in danger. If possible, I would like to humbly request your help in order to protect our citizens from the threat of invasion. Brendan had been schooled properly by his own father about how to talk to high-ranking nobles of the kingdom. William had to agree that Brendan was indeed a capable young man because his choice of words were on point. If not for the fact that he had already known about his greedy ambitions, William might have considered working hand-in-hand with him in order to deal with the current problems that the kingdom was facing. Sadly, William had no time for bullsh** tea, so he decided to handle the matter his own way. Brendan Schwartz, as the Knight Commander of the Helan Kingdom, I hereby find you guilty of treason, William announced in a righteous voice. You are hereby asked to surrender obediently or suffer the consequences. The corner of Brendan's lips curled up into a smile when he heard William's words. A moment later, he laughed out loud as if ridiculing the boy for his stupid declaration. Lord William, I tried to be civil with you, but it seems that your position has clouded your vision. Brendan sneered. The one who can bring him down will become my Prime Minister. Get him. William smirked as several portals appeared behind him. The most notorious member of William's legion appeared inside the throne room and hurled a barrage of curses at the snot-nosed nobles who thought that they could beat the half-elf with their superior numbers. FCK off. A yellow bird headbutted one of the noble brats and sent the latter flying. Several other rainbow birds dealt with their targeted nobles the same way, which made William chuckle from the side. Although the rainbow birds didn't look imposing, they had already raised their rank to the peak of the Class D and were also equipped with William's lollipops. Several magical darts flew through the air as the Ingrati birds unleashed their magic missiles. The Ingrati birds were like miniature, cursing, kamikaze jet fighters that brought fear into the hearts of the young nobles that had sided with Brendan. Brendan snorted and raised his hand to summon his beast companion. A winged tiger appeared inside the throne room and gave out a mighty roar. It was a Class A beast that the Prime Minister had given Brendan on his 18th birthday. It had been with him for more than a year already, and their bond had grown quite strong over that short period of time. Kill him, Alistar. Brendan ordered. Brendan had seen how strong William was during the battle against Kingsley at the half-elf's knighting ceremony. However, he didn't believe that the red-headed boy was capable of dealing with a Class A monster that could only be fought by a team of mithril rank fighters. Chapter 384, Ambitions End Part 2. William raised an eyebrow because a winged tiger was a very rare beast in the Helan Kingdom. Even so, he wasn't perturbed by this overgrown cat with wings. William had been fighting against centennial and millennial beasts ever since he was young, and the tiger's intimidating presence almost made him yawn. Come out and play with this cat, Urchi. I'm rolling. William wasn't able to finish his command because a rainbow-colored anteater suddenly appeared in front of him and curled up into a ball. It then increased its size to 2 meters before hurtling itself to the winged tiger who had been caught completely by surprise. A roar of pain erupted in the throne room as the winged tiger slammed into the wall. Kasaganaga didn't give it any opportunity to regain its footing and repeatedly slammed its body with its full-powered charge. William winced when he saw the bloodthirsty anteater pound the helpless tiger to oblivion. Only when the winged tiger had lost its consciousness did the anteater's rampage stop. The little beast arrogantly raised its head in the air as its small foot stepped on the head of the unconscious tiger. Its futile attempt to look imposing was greatly hampered by its adorable stature, which made William scratch his head. A thud sounded in the room as Brendan fell on his bum looking at the unbelievable results of the battle that had started only a few minutes ago. His eyes locked on the small, rainbow-colored, anteater that was standing arrogantly on top of his beast companion's head. Do you have any other tricks? William asked in a teasing voice. Go on. Take them out while you still have a chance. Brendan shifted his attention on William as he clenched his fist in frustration. Aside from being a scholar, he was also blessed with grade B talent in magic. However, for some reason, he had a feeling that he wouldn't be able to defeat the smiling half-elf in front of him even if he gave it all he had. Lord William, I think we can talk things out, Brendan said as he stood up from the floor. Like I said earlier, this kingdom is in need of talented people to help it survive the current situation. If you like, you can become the king, and I'll be your prime minister. Together we can reshape the Helan kingdom and bring it to new heights. This is a good offer, don't you think so? William admired Brendan's quick-witness. Since the son of the prime minister wasn't able to beat William in battle, Brendan immediately chose to act servile in order to get into his good graces. This shift in attitude was a tactic used by ambassadors and other officers of the kingdom who specialized in negotiations. William had seen similar cases when people had pleaded with him for mercy, but Brendan's attitude made the half-elf quite impressed. This is a dangerous person, William thought as he narrowed his eyes. Capable but dangerous. If the son is already like this, I wonder what the father is like. William didn't really care about the politics of the Helan kingdom. Just like his grandfather, James, they were people who preferred to do things their way. They didn't want to be bound by laws or authority and would even smack anyone that would try to put them down. The half-elf also understood that Brendan only acted this way due to the convenient circumstances that fell on his plate. As someone that was born to serve the king of the next generation, ambition was a very important attitude to have. Frankly, William was at the fence about how he should deal with Brendan. On one hand, he could just imprison the teenager and look for someone to take his place. On the other hand, he could use his amazing managerial skills to let the kingdom function properly. If I tell you to go west, would you dare to go east? William asked. I will go wherever you want me to go, Lord William, Brendan replied with a calm expression on his face. If I tell you to jump, I'll ask you how high I should jump. William nodded as he looked at Brendan with a serious expression. You still want to become the regent of this kingdom? Yes. Brendan replied. William smirked. He thought that the older boy would deny his ambition, but to his surprise, the latter admitted it openly. You are an incredible person. William praised. And very dangerous as well. To be honest, I just want to lock you up until all of this is over. Brendan nodded in understanding. Of course you can do that. But I dare say that no one in this kingdom will be able to do the things that I can do during this chaotic time. I hate to admit it, but you are correct. Right? So, how about my proposal? You can become the king and I'll be your prime minister. William shook his head firmly. I do not wish for dominion. Such a shame. Brendan sighed. We need someone who will lead the people, and I believe that Lord William would be the right person for the job. Also, Sir William, I just want to tell you one more thing. And that is, we have no grudges against each other. This is true. William crossed his arms over his chest as he eyed Brendan. The boy only had an average-looking face. A face that you could easily be forgotten if he blended in with the crowd because no one would give him a second glance. But there was one thing that made him stand out in William's eyes. It was a feeling of cleanliness. This was a trait that was very common among professional assassins. If Brendan had chosen to become an assassin, instead of a scholar, he might have been a very dangerous foe that would bring terror to his enemies. I think I know what to do with him now. William grinned as he looked at the boy in front of him. His attitude towards Brendan had a complete reversal and the latter shivered because William was looking at him as if he was a very beautiful prostitute that was being sold in a brothel. What? Are you serious? EST asked as he looked at William as if he said something ridiculous. Me? The regent of the kingdom. William nodded. Of course I am serious. I don't trust anyone else, aside from you, to manage the capital while I am away. I will leave Dave and Conrad by your side to act as your bodyguards. With them around, you don't have to worry about anything. But, I don't think I am the right person for the job. Did you forget what I told you before? William patted EST's shoulder and gave him a teasing smile. Heroes are not born, they are made. A hero is an ordinary individual who finds strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. Look at the bright side, at least this time, we're not fighting against a terror hand. Yes. We are not fighting a terror hand, but something more sinister like an unknown organization and thousands of elves right outside our border, EST argued. You're not wrong, William nodded in agreement. But, if not you then who? Do you have any recommendations? How about Prince Ernest? EST proposed. The shrimp is still too young and too henpecked to handle the affairs of the K Kingdom. William shook his head. If you don't want to take the position, then I'll just let that guy named Brendan Schwartz handle everything. At least, he is capable of managing the K Kingdom while I am away. EST frowned. Naturally, he knew who Brendan was. He also thought that the son of the Prime Minister could fill in the role of a temporary leader while the royal family was out of commission. However, for some reason, he didn't like the idea of handing over the authority of the royal family to another person. Fine, but I will need some help. EST compromised. I can't do it alone. William smirked. Don't worry. I already made preparations for this. Chapter 385, Meeting with the Diabolical Hell Ape Part 1. Lord EST, it's a pleasure to be of service to you. Brendan pressed his closed fist over his chest as he bowed respectfully. Lord William had already told me the details. I will do my best to serve you faithfully in the absence of the royal family. Thank you, EST stuttered as he looked at the son of the Prime Minister. He and William had only talked about this very same person a few hours ago, and now, Brendan was standing in front of him acting all servile. Can I ask you a question? EST asked. His curiosity had gotten the better of him as he looked at the average-looking man with short blonde hair and blue eyes. Of course, Brendan replied. How did William convince you to work for me? He introduced me to someone. EST tilted his head in confusion. Introduced you to someone? EST's curiosity grew as he looked at the Prime Minister's son with a serious expression. He wondered just what kind of person William introduced to Brendan in order to make him act this way. A very amazing person. Brendan smiled. When he saw the man that William had introduced to him a few hours ago, an electrical shock passed over his body. It was as if he was meant to meet that person. Like the last piece of the puzzle falling into place, Brendan knew then and there that he had found his true calling. He was already looking forward to studying under that man's tutelage, and the condition for that to happen was to serve EST as his right-hand man. Lord EST, I know that you have a few more questions, but Lord William has left me with some orders, Brendan said as he opened a scroll in his hands. For now, it would be best if we gathered the survivors on the outskirts of the Hellan Kingdom and bring them to the capital. Understood. EST snapped to attention as soon as he heard that they needed to rescue the survivors in the towns that were the farthest from the capital. I suggest that we send some representatives to these areas and have them evacuate to the capital, Brendan explained. Right now, we have enough grain to last us 15 years. All of them are magically preserved in the granary of the royal warehouse. Even if we bring in 10 million more mouths to feed, it will only shorten our reserves to 4 years. Aside from that, every duchy has their own granaries. If we can get in touch with the local nobles, we could ask them to coordinate with us when it comes to sharing resources. EST nodded. This was the first time that he was hearing these kinds of things and his impression of Brendan grew by the minute. The most pressing matter right now is the threat on our borders. Brendan frowned. Lord William told me that he would handle this matter, so we should just focus on rescuing more survivors, and finding ways to gather food and other resources. Also, we should build a local night force that will ensure that no crimes will be committed in the capital. Brendan gave EST a serious gaze as he continued his explanation. Even though the majority of the survivors are children, some of them are also in their late teens. Their age might make them bully the younger kids and take advantage of them. This is something that we should prevent at all costs in order to gain peace within the city of Gladiolus. Understood. EST nodded. Is there anything else that we should do for the children? One step at a time, Lord EST. If you focus on everything, Brendan replied, you will not be able to accomplish anything. Let's rescue the survivors first, and form a night unit that will patrol the city. This will give the survivors a sense of security if they see that there are uniformed officers upholding the law. The two finished their meeting in half an hour and immediately went to action. Their role was to maintain the stability of the kingdom. The first thing EST did was order Dave to travel to the Armstrong Duchy where Spencer and Wendy were located. Among the heirs of the high-ranking nobles, Wendy was someone that he could count on when it came to accomplishing the things that William wanted to have happen. Although he still felt conflicted about Wendy being William's first girlfriend, there was nothing he could do about it. He could only blame the curse that was placed on his body because he had met William as a boy, and not as a girl. Brendan also sent some of his trusted subordinates, whom William had beaten up earlier, to use their manpower to reach out to the survivors on the edges of the Hellan Kingdom. Although they were still reluctant about Brendan becoming someone else's subordinate, they still decided to follow him. After all, as long as the one they were following was the person that was calling the shots, they would definitely get an opportunity to make a good impression, and show EST how capable they truly were. As for William, he had already left the capital in order to gather forces to fight against the organization and the Elven army. The two were riding on the back of a Lamasu as they headed towards the forest where William was planning to meet someone. Are you sure that leaving without telling the young master is a good idea? Ian asked while hugging William from behind. It will be fine, William replied. EST will understand because both of us have responsibilities now. Also, time waits for no one. Every second counts. What William didn't tell Ian was that he was still not used to suddenly being intimate with EST, even while she was in her girl from, inside his sea of consciousness. The transition from becoming his best friend to a lover was so sudden that William struggled to accept it right away. For now, he planned to take his time to nurture their feelings for each other so things wouldn't become awkward for the two of them. Still, the night that EST had spent with William inside his spiritual world was not in vain. Her real name is Estelle. If I'm not mistaken, her name means star, William mused as they neared their destination. It's a very good name. Estelle had taken the initiative to tell William her real name, because she was jealous of Ash. She also wanted the boy she liked to call her by her real name and not the fake name that she had to use because of the curse placed on her body. You're thinking about her, right? Ian asked. William didn't need to turn around to know Ian's current expression. Jealous. Instead of answering him, Ian asked him another question. Ian already knew Est's feelings for William and had long accepted it in her heart. Since that was the case, why should she make things difficult for the boy she liked? Do you think the Lord of the Forest will accept your invitation? Ian asked. William quieted down as he pondered the answer to this question. After arriving at the capital, the first beast he wanted to invite was the diabolical hell ape that ruled the forest near the Helan Royal Academy. He was Psoglov's sovereign and a very powerful beast that would definitely bolster William's forces if it were to agree to his request. We'll know soon enough, William said softly as he guided the Lamasu to where the most powerful aura was located. William had already communicated with Psoglov and asked him to relay a message to his sovereign. The demonic dog agreed because it had already planned to hug William's thigh until it reached the millennial rank. Soon, a wide clearing appeared in their vision. Waiting for him in the wide clearing was the diabolical hell ape. However, it was not alone. Gathered around it were the other rulers of the forest. All of them were expecting William's arrival, and they were very curious whether their sovereign would accept his proposal or not. Chapter 386, Meeting with the Diabolical Hell Ape Part 2. William stood in front of the diabolical hell ape, and his gaze never left the millennial beast's eyes. In the past, the ape had used its overwhelming pressure to knock him unconscious with a single stare. Now, that same powerful stare was aimed at his body once more. Although the pressure was the same as he remembered, he was not the same boy that had met this beast for the first time. He had undergone many battles in the time that he had spent at the academy and it had further strengthened his ability to hold his ground against strong opponents. Good, the diabolical hell ape said via telepathy. Your eyes have more strength in them now compared to the first time we met. Now, tell me, child, why have you come to meet me? William knew that if the diabolical hell ape wanted to harm him, he would definitely not be its match. He had a feeling that even Urchitu, the giant white ox that was now part of his herd, would not be strong enough to face off against the sovereign of the forest. Unlike Urchitu and the other powerful beasts in the continent, the diabolical hell ape wasn't affected by the spell. It was born from a place where miasma was everywhere, its body had long surpassed the limits of ordinary creatures, making it almost immune to debuff spells that would weaken it. I am here to ask for help, William replied after organizing his thoughts. He knew that he needed to pick his words wisely in order to command this mighty beast to lend its aid. I am about to fight against the organization that was responsible for casting the continental spell, which has turned all the adults in the continent into statues. If possible, I would like to ask for His Excellency's help in dealing with them. The diabolical hell ape nodded in understanding. That spell was truly powerful. I have never seen a spell of such magnitude in my lifetime. However, this is an affair between humans. I don't see any reason for us to fight. Also, what can you offer us so that we will accept your proposal? William was expecting that the negotiation would head in this direction. Although he had a few treasures in his possession, he wasn't sure that the sovereign of the forest would be interested in them. Because of this, he decided to take a gamble. Is there something that His Excellency wants in return? William inquired. He knew that, as a being that had already reached the millennial rank, there were very few things that could pique its curiosity. Oh? So you're asking me what I like? Now, this is something I didn't see coming. The diabolical hell ape smiled a devilish smile that matched its sinister profile. I thought that you were going to present me with priceless treasures and allow me to choose from them. Although I do have those treasures, it will be best if I just give His Excellency what he truly wants. That way, I will be able to secure your help wholeheartedly. Smart. But, the question is, are you capable of giving me what I want? What is it that you desire, Your Excellency? The diabolical hell ape looked down at William with a serious expression as he pondered the thing that he really wanted to possess. A few minutes passed in silence, but no one within the clearing said anything. William, Ian, and the rest of the creatures in the forest calm waited for the giant ape to state what he wanted. Finally, the sovereign of the forest stated his demand. William's expression became serious, but he was not alone. Ian, Psoglov, and the rest of the rulers of the forest looked at the giant ape in shock when they heard his wish. I want to become human. 5 simple words. Yet, those 5 words relayed how serious the diabolical hell ape was. William didn't dare to ask the millennial beast to repeat what it just said because he knew that the answer would be the same. If anyone who didn't know the temper of the diabolical hell ape were to hear this request, they would definitely laugh out loud. Why? Because it was a ridiculous request. A request that seemed impossible. But no one within the clearing dared to laugh. Because they know that the millennial beast would end their life the moment they did something disrespectful to it. After a few minutes of silence, William took a deep breath and asked the giant ape a question. Your Excellency, I just want to confirm something, William said as he stared at the sovereign of the forest with a serious expression. Do you just want to be able to take human form, or do you really want to become a human? The diabolical hell ape replied firmly and without room for negotiations. A true human. However, I still want to retain the power I currently have. If you can make it happen, I will put my life on the line to aid you in your request. Your Excellency, may I ask why you want to become human? You don't need to know. The diabolical hell's ape carried a tone of finality. William knew that asking for more might jeopardize his chances of being able to ask it for help. Now that the millennial beast had stated its terms, it was now time for him to find a way to make it a reality. System, is there a way to do this? Host, if we use the God Shop, we can definitely do it. However, the cost will be not lower than 100,000 God points, which we currently don't have right now. William sighed internally. He had just been given a loan of 1,000,000 God points by the gods in the temple. His face was not thick enough to ask for more. Your Excellency, I cannot grant your request, William replied honestly. The expression of the diabolical hell ape remained calm. It didn't expect that William would be able to grant his request. If it was easy, he would have already turned into a human long ago. Then we have nothing more to talk about, the diabolical hell ape stated. When you find a way to turn me into a human, you will know where to find me. Until then, you will be barred from returning to this forest. The giant ape was about to leave when a thought crossed its mind. If any of the rulers of the forest, aside from Psoglov, want to accompany you, then I will allow it. However, once they decide to join you, they will no longer be welcome in my domain. The beasts in the forest looked at their sovereign, and the giant ape only gave them a light snort before walking away. It had already said everything it wanted to say. Whether the rulers of the forests wanted to join William or not, he had already given them his explicit permission, in exchange for being expelled from his domain forever. The rulers of the forest, who planned to discuss terms with William, hesitated because of their sovereign's ultimatum. Frankly, they were fine with the current lifestyle they had. They were just jealous of Psoglov's increase in strength and ranking due to the resources that were given to him by the red-headed boy. They all had a difficult choice to make now. Should they join William and take a gamble? Or should they stay where it was safe and where they could live their lives without having to fight against strong opponents? The beasts were all pondering the answers to these questions while the half-elf stood in place. Only Psoglov was grinning ear to ear. Naturally, he already knew the answer to these questions, but he had no intention of saying anything. For him, the less competition he had, the more rewards he would gain by staying by William's side. As the boy's first demonic business partner, Psoglov had no intention of sharing his resources with anyone. It hoped that his comrades in the forest would all back down. That way, he would be able to cross into the centennial rank in the not-so-distant future. After all, he was not like the other rulers in the forest. He didn't want to stay in a small place for the rest of his life. Psoglov also wanted to travel the world. It was a demonic beast that had a thirst for conquest. Although it liked to play it safe and stay away from dangerous situations, it didn't mean that it was a coward. It was only waiting for the right moment, to open its razor-sharp fangs, and go in, for the kill. Chapter 387, Lord of the Wilds Part 1. The Lamasu soared in the sky as William guided it to the southern region of the Hellan Kingdom. It had been 3 days since he had his meeting with the diabolical Hell Ape. As he expected, none of the rulers of the forest approached him after being given a stern warning by their sovereign. His next destination was the whimsical forest. The place where he met Ethon, tamed the hippogriffs, the griffin Lionheart, met the centaur race, and captured the wyverns. After the battle with the war hyenas, the centaur chieftain told William that he could ask them a favor as repayment for lending his hand to save their tribe. Although the red-headed boy felt a little guilty to use the favor in this manner, he didn't have much of a choice. What he needed now were fighters that would lend their aid to his cause. The matter of the diabolical Hell Ape would be put on hold for now. He had no time to worry about things that were outside of his control. The Lamasu soared above the trees as it traveled to their next destination. None of the creatures in the forest challenged its approach, because it was a Class A beast. Although there were beasts that were of the centennial and millennial rank inside the forest, they didn't meet any of them along the route that William had chosen for them. The system had already detected these powerful beasts and had labeled their location on William's map. Naturally, William avoided these places as he headed deeper into the forest. After the battle between the centaurs and the wyverns, the centaur race had decided to migrate deeper in the forest. Their allies the hippogriffs, the deer, the moose, and the wild bison followed them as well. The centaur chieftain's good friend was a millennial beast. With its help, the centaur tribe was able to relocate and live peacefully within its domain. Bastion, the captain of the centaurs, had given William a special artifact that would lead him to their new home. Centaurs were prideful creatures. Once they had given their word, they would do it. This was why William was feeling very guilty, because he was going to use their favor to ask them to fight in a war that had no relation to them. 3 hours after arriving at the whimsical forest, William finally arrived at a grassland where hundreds of deer, moose, and bison were grazing. Not far from there, were dozens of hippogriffs resting near a river. As soon as they sensed the Lamasu approaching their location, the alpha of the hippogriff gave a war cry and several of its companions soared into the sky alongside it, to fight against the intruder that had entered their sanctuary. The sounds of running hooves resounded in the grassland as a platoon of centaurs rushed to the scene wielding their bows and arrows. The centaurs had already knocked their arrows on their bows when they heard a shout come from the rider of the Lamasu that had entered their airspace. Everyone stand down. It's me, William. William shouted. Bastion, hold your fire. Bastion immediately raised his hand in a stopping gesture to prevent the centaurs from releasing their arrows. The alpha of the hippogriffs also recognized the shameless brat who had extorted him in handing over some of the members of its herd. Honestly, it wanted to attack William, but the boy's "I dare you to do it" glare deterred it from doing anything reckless. It only gave the boy a hateful shriek before returning to the ground to guard his herd. The alpha of the herd had already made a decision. If William came once again to snatch members of its herd, it would throw all caution to the wind and fight the half-elf to the bitter end. Fortunately, they were not the reason why William had returned to the whimsical forest. Although William was tempted, he didn't want to antagonize the alpha beast who was already glaring at him with hate. "Welcome, friend," Bastion greeted William as soon as the lamisol landed on the ground. William smiled, "Thank you. I have come to talk to your chieftain. Is he around?" Bastion nodded. "Did you come here because you are going to use the favor that has been rewarded to you?" "Yes." "Very well. Follow me." William didn't expect that Bastion would be this casual when it came to his purpose for coming to the whimsical forest. Although things were going smoothly, he was still feeling anxious about whether the centaur chieftain would honor their promise or not. Bastion guided William to a valley, not far from the grasslands. Hundreds of centaurs were hard at work as they skinned the wild animals that they had hunted down in the whimsical forest. When they noticed Bastion's approach, most of them greeted him. They also greeted William, whom they recognized as a hero that had helped save their tribe in their time of need. "Centaurs do not forget the favor we owe," Bastion said as he guided William towards the biggest structure inside the valley. "Even if we have to sacrifice our lives, we will honor our pledge. We are the Chiron tribe. Never forget that, William." William nodded. Earlier, he was still doubting whether the Chiron tribe would honor their word. Now, all of those worries disappeared completely. Bastion's words were filled with pride and determination. It would be disrespectful if William were to challenge his tribe's dignity. The residence of the centaur chieftain was quite big. It was as if it was built to host celebrations that could sit over 100 centaurs at the same time. When they neared the entrance, William felt an unfamiliar presence that made him raise his guard. A powerful beast, and its strength is even stronger than the diabolical hell ape. William couldn't help but be shocked at this unexpected development. For him, the sovereign of the forest was already at the peak of the millennial beasts. He didn't expect that he would find someone stronger than it during his visit to the centaur tribe. Could it be a myriad beast? William thought as he followed behind Bastion. "I have only met the myriad ant queen, but this presence is stronger than hers." Although William wasn't a studious person, he still knew that the Hellan kingdom didn't have a guardian beast protecting it. There's no point in overthinking things. William sighed in his heart. "I just hope it won't turn hostile when it meets me." Soon they arrived at an imposing gate that Bastion said led to their great hall where their chieftain usually held his conferences. The powerful presence that William felt was undoubtedly behind the double gates. He took a deep breath to calm himself as Bastion opened the gates to lead him inside. There, he saw a creature that was over 4 meters tall. It had the head of a stag and antlers adorned with 2 golden bangles on each side. Its antlers looked so majestic that Spire's own antlers seemed to be dwarfed by its elegance. It had the body of a man, and a dark green snake had coiled itself around his arm, resting its head on its shoulder. Out of instinct, William had activated his appraisal skill to see the identity of the beast that was currently staring back at him. Cernunnos. The Horned One. Lord of the Wilds. Protector of the Forest. Threat level, SSR, mid. Myriad beast. Can be added to the herd. Success rate, 0.000001%. Chapter 388, Lord of the Wilds Part 2. William's pupils shrank as he read the information in front of him. He had only seen the first half of the myriad beast's information, but it was more than enough to tell him that his hunch was right. What he felt was an existence that was stronger than the diabolical hell ape. He stood in place, daring not to move, as he read the full information of the being that was in front of him. Cernunnos. The Horned One. Lord of the Wilds. Protector of the Forest. Threat level, myriad beast, high. Can be added to the herd. Success rate, 0.000001%. This myriad beast is often referred to as Horned One because of its majestic antlers that are second to none. He is a protector, and a provider, which has also earned him the title the Lord of the Wilds due to his power and influence to control every beast living inside his domain. The torque on its antlers symbolizes life and death, and holds the power to control nature and life magic. This myriad beast has a dual personality. Due to being able to wield the power of life and death, it sometimes has a gentle personality and, at times, is a death god that will reap the lives of others. Just like the forces of nature that are wild and unpredictable, it is both a giver and taker of life. It would be best to tread carefully in the presence of the one who is said to also wield the power to summon the ancient treants to fight by its side. FCK. William cursed internally. He didn't know if he should praise or slap himself for picking this time to visit the centaurs in the whimsical forest. The myriad beast in front of him was no laughing matter. It had a dual personality, which made it very dangerous. The only advantage that William possessed at the moment was that this particular beast was also a herd-type creature. He hoped that out of respect for his profession, Cernunnos wouldn't do anything to harm him and Ian, who was right beside him. "Forgive me, Great One," Bastion pressed his closed fist over his chest as he greeted Cernunnos. Our friend, William von Ainsworth, had arrived. He came here to see the great chieftain. Bastion wasn't able to finish his words because Cernunnos silenced him with a stare. It then looked at the red-headed boy who was also looking back at him with a calm expression. "Ainsworth, you say? Are you related to James, perhaps?" Cernunnos inquired. It had a neutral expression on its face, so William didn't know if it had a good relationship with his grandpa or not. "He is my grandfather," William answered. "Your Excellency, do you know of him?" "Of course. How could I forget James?" Cernunnos nodded. "We've known each other for many years. In fact, both of us met 50 years ago." William smiled because it seemed that the myriad beast and his grandfather were old acquaintances. "Since you are related to him, then you can die now." Sir Nunnos roared as the dark green snake that was resting on his arm increased its size and charged towards William with the intention of eating him whole. William hurriedly grabbed Ian's hand and vanished from where he stood. He had retreated to the Thousand Beast domain in order to escape the attack of the myriad beast who seemed to have a vendetta against his grandfather. Sir Nunnos clicked his tongue when he saw that William was able to escape his attack. It then recalled the dark green snake, which obediently coiled itself on his arm again and rested its head on his shoulder. Bastion's body became stiff as he stood in place. He didn't expect that their benefactor would be attacked by the guardian that ruled these lands. Your Excellency, he was the boy who had saved our tribe when the wyverns attacked, Bastion commented. Sir Nunnos paused before shifting his attention to Bastion. The pressure he was radiating earlier disappeared and was replaced by a gentle and refreshing aura. Why didn't you say sooner? Sir Nunnos inquired. Your Excellency, you didn't wait for me to finish. Are you saying that it was my fault? Bastion hurriedly shook his head like his life depended on it. After living with Sir Nunnos for a while, they had realized how quickly its mood changes. However, most of the time, it was gentle and kind. Sometimes, it would even mediate between the conflicts of the denizens of the forest when it affected the balance of nature within its domain. Due to its nature, it didn't mind if both sides killed each other because it was part of the natural cycle. Still, whenever Sir Nunnos was in his aggressive mood, it would still be lenient enough and not kill anyone right off the bat. Clearly, Sir Nunnos and James didn't have a good relationship and might even be enemies for the myriad beast to instantly attack the young boy who was a guest of the Chiron tribe. Are you okay, Ash? William asked as he helped his mermaid lover who had instinctively transformed to protect him when the dark green snake charged towards them. Ash had two forms, her usual mermaid form and her mermaid battle form. If she was on land then she would stand on two legs and fight. However, her strength would be halved when fighting on land. Only when she was in the water could her full power be unleashed. She was wearing sea blue armor that seemed to be made from a metal that William wasn't familiar with. His only gripe was that the armor was quite revealing and showed Ash's curves which the red-headed boy had already claimed for himself. Well, at least it's not bikini armor, William thought as he stared at Ash's battle regalia. Have you stared enough? Ash asked as she bumped her closed fist on William's head. What's wrong? Why did that millennial beast attack us? I thought it knew your grandfather. William raised both of his hands in order to calm the mermaid who was throwing a barrage of questions at him. Correction, it wasn't a millennial beast, that one is a bona fide myriad beast, William answered. Second, how was I to know that my old man and Sir Nunnos had bad blood between them? This is the first time I've seen the Lord of the Wilds and the first thing it did after asking a question was attack me. Ash calmed down a bit after hearing William's explanation. However, that calmness soon disappeared as the words that William had said registered in her mind. That was a myriad beast. Ash stuttered as she covered her lips with her hand. How can you tell? It's because this is not the first time I have met a myriad beast, William replied. He trusted Ash, but the system had warned him repeatedly to not tell anyone about his appraisal ability because it might cause some problems if people were to discover it. There were also appraisers in the world of Hestia, but most of them could only appraise weapons, armors, jewelry, accessories, and artifacts. However, none had the ability to appraise beasts and people. The system even added that if William were to upgrade his shepherd job class to its final form, he would gain the ability to appraise the true name of any mortal in the world of Hestia. Having the ability to know the true name of named beings was a priceless ability because it would give William the power to control their lives. This was why the system had advised him to never tell a soul about it. Not even to his family, masters, and lovers. If that was a myriad beast, and it's on bad terms with your grandfather, then what do we do now? Ash asked anxiously. If we leave this domain, won't we appear in the same place we were standing a while ago? William once again nodded his head to affirm his lover's worries. Ah, don't worry, I'm not going to harm you again. At least, not until after you finished your business with the centaur chieftain. William's and Ash's bodies stiffened when they heard the voice of the beast they had tried to speak to just a few minutes ago. The two exchanged a glance before their heads slowly turned to the side to see the 4-meter-tall Sir Nunnos standing a few meters away from them. Chapter 389, Negotiation with the Centaur Race Part 1. William summoned his staff and Ash summoned her sword. The two of them took a fighting stance as they faced the myriad beast who had, for some reason, appeared inside the Thousand Beast domain. How did you get here, Your Excellency? William asked. How did you manage to enter my domain? This was the first time someone had entered his domain without his permission. Not only that, the one who entered it was the Lord of the Wilds that had attacked with the intention of killing him earlier. Good question, Sir Nunnos replied with an amused expression on his face. Very well. I will tell you the reason as compensation for attacking you earlier. The myriad beast casually sat cross-legged in front of William as if the domain belonged to him. The other inhabitants of the Thousand Beast domain had sensed his presence and immediately gathered to William's side, with the exception of Ella. Although Ella had sensed the myriad beast, she remained inside the magic crystal cavern to watch over the three sleeping beasts. Even so, she was paying attention to the uninvited guest and would immediately come to William's aid if Sir Nunnos tried something funny. First and foremost, the entire whimsical forest is my domain, Sir Nunnos explained. The moment you entered the forest, you were already inside my jurisdiction. Since this is my domain, I have absolute control over whatever I want to do inside it. William was surprised to hear this. He never thought that the forest, that could be visited by anyone in the Hellan Kingdom, was actually a domain that belonged to a myriad beast. I wonder if the Sword Saint is aware of the existence of this myriad beast, William thought as he looked at the myriad beast who seemed to be keen on telling him how he managed to enter his domain without permission. The second reason is because when the entrance to a domain opens, it will remain open for less than a minute. Sir Nanos continued his explanation. Even if the entrance disappears, it is still there, only invisible. Do you understand? William frowned. This was the first time he heard of these things and it made him anxious. Seeing the red-headed boy's reaction, Sir Nanos chuckled. Relax. Not everyone can enter a domain that easily. Even myriad beasts and demigods can't enter someone else's domain that easily. Like I said earlier, you entered my domain then opened the gateway to your own in order to escape my attack. This caused a rift in my domain. As a domain master, I have the ability to fix or pry open the rift that appeared in my territory. Before I forget, not all myriad beasts and demigods have domains. I just so happen to be one of those few beings that has my own domain. William nodded. Although he didn't know if Sir Nanos was telling the truth or not, it didn't change the fact that the myriad beast was now inside his domain. Based on the information he gathered from his appraisal skill earlier, the Lord of the Wilds had two sides. Right now, it was the good side of Sir Nanos that was talking to him. This gave him a little peace of mind, but he knew that this myriad beast's mood could flip anytime, so he didn't want to act disrespectful to it. Your Excellency, is there a way for me to prevent any uninvited guests from entering my domain? William inquired. Those who have the same abilities as you. Sir Nanos shook his head. No. The only way to prevent anyone from entering your domain is by choosing a safe location before you open the gateway that leads inside it. The Lord of the Wilds then gave William an appraising stare. He could feel James' bloodline flowing inside the boy's body and determined that he was indeed the annoying man's grandchild. Well, even though you made a mistake in allowing someone to enter your domain without your permission, it wouldn't change the fact that, if you hadn't done what you have done, you'd be dead by now. This is also a fact. So, good job in surviving the attack of a myriad beast. William didn't know if Sir Nanos was complimenting him or pitying him. All he knew was that the Lord of the Wilds didn't seem to want to kill him right now. After finishing his explanation, Sir Nanos scanned his surroundings. Its eyes, that could see every nook and cranny of the whimsical forest, weren't able to examine William's thousand-beast domain in detail. This was a normal thing because this particular domain didn't belong to him. After seeing that further prying would bear no fruit, Sir Nanos once again shifted his attention to the boy who was looking back at him with a guarded expression. Boy, unlike the Minotaur race, there are beasts that won't bat an eye in killing the disciple of the Eternal Guardian, Sir Nanos stated. Although I will pay a hefty price in doing so, make no mistake that not even you are safe from beings that far surpass your current level of strength. Even if they were to fall under the jurisdiction of the Eternal Guardian, they would not bow to you and give you face. William's expression remained serious throughout Sir Nanos' explanation. He already understood that not all herd-type creatures would get along with him. Even so, he still nodded his head to acknowledge the myriad beast's sincere warning. Thank you for the wisdom you have imparted to me, Your Excellency, William replied. Sir Nanos nodded and stood up from the ground. Let's go back to the Great Hall. The Centaur Chieftain is waiting for you. The Lord of the Wilds didn't wait for William's reply and disappeared from where he stood. William immediately asked the system to find the myriad beast's location. He also extended his senses throughout his domain to see if Sir Nanos decided to take a stroll inside it. Half a minute later, the system and William confirmed that their uninvited guest had truly left the thousand-beast domain. Let's go together, Ash said. Don't even think about leaving me here while you deal with that myriad beast by yourself. William looked at his mermaid lover before reluctantly nodding his head. The thought of letting Ash stay inside his domain while he negotiated with the Centaur Chieftain crossed his mind. However, before he could even say his thoughts out loud, Ash had already shot it down. Very well. But, stay close to me, understand? William asked. Ash nodded firmly. She didn't want to be baggage for William, but she didn't want her lover to face his challenges alone. After holding each other's hands, both of them returned to the Great Hall where the Centaur Chieftain and the moody Sir Nanos were waiting for them. William hoped that the negotiation with the Centaur race would proceed smoothly now, so that he could leave the whimsical forest as soon as possible. Chapter 390, Negotiation with the Centaur Race Part 2. Welcome to the Chiron tribe, young William. Vral, the Centaur Chieftain of the Chiron tribe, said as he extended his hand to shake William's hand. William extended his own hand and held Vral's hand firmly. The two smiled at each other as they finished their handshake. Bastion told me everything, Vral said in an apologetic tone. Sir Nanos is prone to mood swings. I hope you don't hold a grudge against him. William gave a sidelong glance towards the myriad beast that sat cross-legged in the corner of the Great Hall. If possible, William wanted to have a private talk with Vral, but Sir Nanos seemed to be interested in the reason for William's visit. Knowing that he had no other choice but to negotiate with Vral alongside Sir Nanos, William steeled himself and replied with a smile. How can I possibly hold a grudge against His Excellency? William replied. I am someone that holds a grudge. But, if I say that out loud, this moody myriad beast will slap me into meat paste. The Centaur Chieftain nodded with a smile. However, before they could continue their discussion, Sir Nanos opened his eyes and glanced at William. Ah! I forgot to tell you, I can read people's minds as well, Sir Nanos commented. So you like holding grudges? What a coincidence. I like holding grudges as well. William's body stiffened as several beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He wanted to curse out loud and give the bastard beast the middle finger for not telling him that he could read minds. Ha, ha ha ha. William laughed. So His Excellency also likes to hold grudges. They say that birds of the same feathers flock together. When I saw His Excellency for the first time, I knew that the two of us would get along well. Sir Nunnos laughed as well. Ha ha ha. You're just saying that so I won't slap you and turn you into meat paste, right? Yes. Honesty is a virtue. Make sure to remember that in the future, little Will. Ian, who was watching from the side, covered his lips with his hand. This was the first time he had seen the narcissistic, and arrogant, William become timid. He found it funny enough that he could barely restrain his laughter. Usually, it was the half-elf who always had the final say on things. Even when the two of them were inside his spiritual world, William would always tease and bully her, and she was unable to fight back. Seeing this is so refreshing, Ian thought as he glanced at the red-headed boy who was squirming in his seat like he was suffering from diarrhea. Fortunately, Vral was a good host and immediately threw an olive branch to save William from his current predicament. Young friend, you visited us here to ask us to repay the favor we owed you, right? Vral asked. Tell me, how can our tribe be of service to you? William looked at the centaur chieftain that was at the peak of the centennial rank and gave him a thumbs up in his heart. He was finding it hard to take the initiative to open the discussion in regards to his reason for visiting the Chiron tribe due to Sir Nunno's presence. Sir Vral, I came here to ask for the tribe's aid in fighting against the organization that was responsible for casting the continental spell that affected the entire continent. I don't know if you are aware, but all the adults have turned into crystal statues. My goal is to find a way to break the curse and free the adults from their crystal prisons. Vral rubbed his chin after he heard William's explanation. Naturally, he had also seen the continental spell as it descended upon the land, but it didn't affect them much because Sir Nunnos had shielded his domain from the effects of the Aurora Borealis. Vral was also not aware that the adults in the human lands had turned into crystal statues. As a creature of the forest, it didn't really care about the affairs of men, but hearing such a story made him frown. Let me get this straight. You plan to fight against this organization with the members of our tribe, right? Yes. Also, aside from this organization, you also want our help to resist the invasion of the elves as well. That is indeed the case, Sir Vral. William nodded. The red-headed boy was currently at his wits' end about how to fight against the organization and resist the elven invasion at the same time. The half-elf didn't believe that the current Hellan kingdom could withstand an elven invasion even if all the survivors were to fight with their life on the line. Vral closed his eyes as he pondered how to deal with the current situation. Naturally, he was duty-bound to send some of his warriors to assist William because this was the promise that their tribe had made. The problem the centaur chieftain was facing at the moment was the number of warriors that he could assign to William's cause. After the Wyvern incident, their tribes had suffered many casualties. Many of their warriors died in fighting against the Wyverns and were hyenas, and he couldn't send a lot of men to aid William in his quest. After careful consideration, the centaur chieftain opened his eyes and gave his answer. I will place Bastion's company under your command, Vral stated. His subordinates only number 100, but all of them are seasoned fighters. I apologize, but I cannot send more warriors to assist you in your endeavors. William knew that the current Chiron tribe was unable to give him many warriors. Frankly, he had already prepared himself to accept any reinforcements that they could give him, but the force that was assigned to him still exceeded his expectations. Although 100 centaurs was only a tenth of the Chiron's tribe current forces, it didn't change the fact that all of them were Class C, mid, beasts. Bastion, their leader, was a Class B, low, centaur, and William had seen how proficient he was in commanding his subordinates. He was very happy with the centaur Chieftain's generosity and thanked him for the help that he had given him. After the two finished their discussion, Sir Nunnos cleared his throat as he stared at the half-elf that was itching to leave his domain. Although I don't know how strong this organization is, it is very clear that 100 centaurs are not enough to fight them, Sir Nunnos said. Also, the elven race is superior to humans. Even if you manage to beat the organization you spoke of, you have no chance of beating the elves. In my eyes, this endeavor of yours is fruitless. Your best alternative is to surrender and ask for favorable conditions. William could understand why Sir Nunnos thought like this. In the face of the elven prodigies, the human survivors were like toddlers that were waiting to be bullied by adults. They just didn't have the ability to resist their invasion. Especially when they succeeded in finishing the teleport gates they were building. According to Takam, this gate is a one-way gate that would allow elves from the Silver Moon continent to teleport to the southern continent. This very notion made William very anxious. This was why he planned to sabotage the elven teleport gates once he finished dealing with the organization. It's futile, Sir Nunnos declared as he read the plan in William's head. But, I'm curious as well. How will you, the grandchild of that bastard James, be able to pull it off? This remains to be seen. The Lord of the Wilds stood up and took one of the bangles hanging on its antlers off and gave it to William. Wear this in your arm, Sir Nunnos said in a tone that wouldn't accept no for an answer. Treat this as a lucky charm. Who knows? This might save your life once. William gingerly took the golden bangle from the myriad beast's hand and wore it on his arm like a bracelet. The bangle adjusted its size to match William's arm size and stayed in place. The half-elf didn't feel anything special about the bangle, but he had no doubt that it was not an ordinary accessory. Thank you, Your Excellency, for your generous gift. William bowed respectfully. Ian, who was standing beside William, also bowed his head to thank the myriad beast. Sir Nunnos didn't say anything else and left the great hall without a second glance. The Lord of the Wild had stayed inside his domain for hundreds of years without interacting with the outside world. Although Sir Nunnos didn't mind who got to rule the human lands, he was very keen on witnessing the struggles that would take place during this chaotic time. The golden bangle was a life-saving item. It would save William's life once before returning to Sir Nunnos' hand. However, Until that time arrived, the Lord of the Wild would be able to see the world through William's eyes. It was looking forward to seeing the battles that James' grandson would be fighting in the future. Perhaps, by doing so, it would learn more about human emotions. Emotions that it still couldn't understand after so many years of living in the whimsical forest. Chapter 391, Thousand Beast Valley. Bastion and the rest of the Centaur warriors marveled at William's Thousand Beast domain. Although it couldn't compare to the size of the whimsical forest, it was still spacious enough to fit their entire tribe, and still have space for more. Bastion looked at the towering Urchitu, who was looking back down at him. The two stared at each other for a while before introducing their names to each other. Urchitu. Bastion. After that brief exchange, they chatted with each other, while William purchased log houses for the centaurs to live in. Fortunately, each house only cost him 2 god points each. After careful consideration, William placed the centaur camp in the south where the quiver trees were located. Since the centaur race were also proficient archers, William bought 7 more quiver trees that would supply them with normal and elemental arrows. This made Bastion and the other centaur warriors look at William more favorably. God points, 2080. Because William had been too busy in the real world, he wasn't aware of the changes that had happened inside the Thousand Beast domain. When the Hidden Valley was relocated to William's domain, some of the animals weren't able to flee and had been trapped inside ever since. Naturally, these beasts had nowhere to run and were forced to submit to the Thousand Beast domain's local tyrants. Ella personally visited the valley, which had been renamed the Thousand Beast Valley, and talked to its inhabitants. Although the animals that had been trapped in the valley numbered almost 300, the good news was that all of them were magical beasts. William was pleasantly surprised as he looked at the list that the system had prepared for him and checked its contents with anticipation. Class D beasts. Vicious hunting swines equals 23 individuals. Red-horned rabbits equals 47 individuals. Malevolent berserker bees equals 168 individuals. Class C beasts. Black-winged panthers equals 10 individuals. Crimson cavern wolf spiders equals 38 individuals. Class B beasts. Supreme killer koalas equals 6 individuals. Very nice. William exclaimed as he saw the list of monsters that were now part of his beast domain. Aside from the black-winged panther, that had tried to eat him when he was doing his archery training, the rest of the beasts in the lists were unknown to him. He was very curious to meet them all, especially the supreme giant killer koalas whose name made William wonder if they were really the cuddly koalas he remembered back on Earth. William didn't waste any time and visited the valley to see the new additions to his King's Legion. Ian followed behind him because she was also curious about the beasts that had been added to William's domain. When the two of them arrived at the valley, he saw several blood-red bees that were at least a foot long. The flora of the valley had been untouched, so the malevolent berserker bees had no problem with their food supply. These beasts were omnivorous and preyed on both flowers and beasts alike. Naturally, they still preferred flowers over meat, but they would not hesitate to kill in order to protect their hive from any intruders. William marveled at the hive that was as big as a 3-story house. The bees immediately encircled him when he approached their hive, but none of them attacked him. Ella had forbidden them from attacking anyone inside the Thousand Beast domain, and the Queen Bee agreed to her orders. Since they were now part of William's King's Legion, he was able to communicate with them even though they weren't part of his herd. William talked to the bees and asked them if he could get some of their honey. The half-elf was very curious about what kind of honey the bees produced. However, before he could even get what he wanted, several bees returned to the hive carrying goblin body parts. William watched as the bees chewed on the goblin flesh before flying to the hive to produce their honey. After seeing that scene, William's craving for honey vanished completely. He then bid the bees goodbye, while the latter insisted that he take some of their honeycombs with him. William shuddered when the bees gave him 2 honeycombs filled with honey that they produced from eating goblin meat. The half-elf wasn't able to decline their kind offer and hurriedly stored the honey inside his storage ring. He didn't plan to eat this honey personally, but since he already had it in his possession, he might as well use it as a syrup for pancakes that he would serve to pesky guests that come to annoy him. The next place he visited was the nest of the Crimson Cavern wolf spiders. Just as their names suggested, they lived in the caverns that were located in the caves of the valley. The half-elf didn't have any arachnophobia. Even so, he still wasn't able to stop himself from shuddering when the 2-meter-tall, black and red-striped spider wrapped its hairy legs around his body when it gave him a hug as a greeting. William endured its warm greeting for half a minute before he politely backed away and bid it goodbye. Ian stayed over 20 meters away from the spider because she was not fond of insects, especially spiders the size of a carriage. The black-winged panther's den was at the heart of the valley. William was already aware of how strong this beast was because he had fought against it inside the forest. If not for Blitz, the hawk, and John's animal companion, he might not have been able to escape its pursuit in one piece. Panthers didn't usually live in groups. But, black-winged panthers were different. They were prized for their cubs, and blacksmiths liked to use their steel wings as ingredients when forming weapons and armor. William's arrows were forged from the wings of a black-winged panther and they were very durable. Adventurers usually captured them because of this, so these magical beasts had forsaken their solitary ways and banded together to repel anyone who would dare to hunt them down. After meeting the alpha of the panthers, William made his way to the last creature on his list, which was the supreme killer koala. They were located in the western part of the valley where giant eucalyptus trees could be found. Ian's eyes became gentle when she saw the meter-tall cuddly beast gnawing on leaves as they leaned their backs against the tree. The koala had grey-brown fur that seemed very soft to touch. Ian was very tempted to touch it, so she approached it without thinking much. Ian had completely forgotten that the name of this beast was Supreme Killer Koala, and not Supreme Gentle Koala. As soon as Ian was 10 meters away from the cuddly koala, it immediately bared its fangs and grew in size. The meter-tall koala transformed into a 3-meter-tall giant with razor-sharp fangs and claws. A wall of ice appeared in front of the supreme killer koala and stopped its mad charge towards the panicked Ian, who was caught completely by surprise. William summoned his wooden staff and didn't show any mercy. He pummeled the beast's head left and right until it returned to its original form. Just like the malevolent berserker bees, the supreme killer koalas were omnivores. However, when given the choice, they would happily eat meat instead of leaves. After regaining its senses, the koala hurriedly apologized to William and Ian, whom it had attacked earlier. It insisted that it lost its rationality for a moment because it hadn't eaten meat for a long time. Because of this, William gathered all the koalas in the western part of the valley, and transferred them into the goblin crypt. This way they could feast to their heart's content and no longer lose control of their bloodthirsty nature. Chapter 392, The Best Gift of All Part 1. After parting ways with the Chiron tribe and the myriad beast that was prone to mood swings, William continued his journey to gather allies. This time, his destination was towards the north of the Helan Kingdom. According to Takam, there was a giant trollhound that was hunting around the base of the Kirinter Mountains. Since this particular beast wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary, Takam ignored its existence. Naturally, William knew the identity of this giant trollhound. This time, it had the perfect bait to make it join his team, since he was about to fight against the same organization that had made it, and its kin, suffer. They had been traveling for 4 days before they decided to rest at a valley they found along the way. William had allowed the centaurs and some of the other creatures inside his 1000-beast domain to hunt the wild beasts that inhabited the area. Centaurs liked to eat meat as well, but they didn't like eating goblin meat. For them, it was disgusting, so William accepted their proposal to hunt every now and then when an opportunity arose. Ash was also weary of their long days of traveling, and William couldn't bear to let his lover suffer. The two spent some tender moments in a hidden hot spring on the northern side of the valley. After that, they had a light dinner before sleeping in the villa inside the 1000-beast domain. When William opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Ashes sleeping beside him. She was sleeping peacefully in William's embrace. The red-headed boy looked at her with a gentle gaze, as he moved away the strands of hair covering her beautiful face. William knew that if his current self traveled to the past, and told his younger self that the person whom he always quarreled with would end up becoming his lover, that younger version of himself wouldn't believe it, and would even spit on him and say, "You mad, brew." William chuckled internally as he thought of this scene, because he himself found it hard to believe. While he was pondering about such things, a notification appeared on his status page. Ding! Happy 15th birthday, host. I wish you more experience points to level up all your job classes and enough stamina to keep your lovers satisfied. The system also played a happy birthday song that made William realize that he had completely forgotten that it was indeed his birthday. He checked the date on the lower right side of his status page just to be sure that the system wasn't pranking him. Day 13, month of strength. William looked at the date for a few more seconds before shifting his attention back to the sleeping beauty in front of him. To think I'd be celebrating my 15th birthday with you. Lady Fate sure knows how to crack a joke. William planted a kiss on Ash's forehead as he held her firmly in his embrace. I guess we can spend one more day here to rest before we go to the north, where it is cold year-round. The two of them would always sleep inside William's sea of consciousness during the night. Ash insisted that, even when resting, she wanted to help speed up the recovery of William's spiritual world. William welcomed her proposal because Ash had a habit of hugging him tightly as she closed her eyes to sleep. This habit had rubbed off on William, and he too, looked forward to hugging his mermaid lover every night. 2 hours later, Ash finally stirred from her slumber. Good morning, William said with a smile. Ash sleepily kissed his lips before returning his greeting. Good morning. What time is it? Around 8 in the morning. You must be very tired if you oversleep this much. I'm not used to traveling non-stop and going from place to place. William smiled as he kissed her lips before helping her to stand up. The half-elf decided to hold a little celebration to commemorate his birthday, while also giving Ash some time to recover from their hectic traveling schedule. What? Ash looked at William in a daze. Today is your birthday? Why didn't you tell me sooner? William scratched his head. He wanted to say that he had completely forgotten about his birthday and was only reminded by the system. However, he couldn't do that, so he just said that he suddenly remembered that it was his birthday after waking up. Sorry, I don't have any gifts that I can give you, Ash said as she looked at William with a pout. I would have been able to prepare something if you had told me a few days ago. William pulled the pouting mermaid to his embrace and kissed her forehead. Silly, you've already given me the best gift of all. William then held Ash's hand and placed it over his chest. The blue gem embedded in William's chest glowed as its previous owner touched it. Thank you, William said softly. This is the best gift that someone has ever given me. I will properly repay you with my body 3 years from now. 3 years from now. Ash looked up at William because she didn't understand what the half-elf was hinting at. William nodded as he whispered something in Ash's ears, which made the mermaid blush from the nape of her neck, up to the tip of her ears. The red-headed boy thought that Ash would get mad at him for teasing her, but contrary to his expectations, the mermaid only rested her head on his chest, and replied in a volume that William could barely hear. I'll be waiting. That was what Ash said, and because of that, the two left William's spiritual world an hour later. Sounds of merrymaking echoed inside William's 1000-beast domain as William's companions ate and drank their fill. The half-elf spent 50 god points to buy delicious food and wine for everyone that made them extremely happy. I never tasted wine as good as this. Bastion exclaimed. And this meat? Just what kind of meat is this? It literally melts in my mouth and the aftertaste is simply out of this world. That's right. This is amazing. I wish I could bring this wine back to my brothers in the tribe. They would definitely love this. Cheers to William. I pray for more birthdays to come. Cheers. Everyone ate happily and William looked at Urchito who was wholeheartedly eating roasted boars one by one. This giant white ox was the first millennial beast that had joined William's herd, and the half-elf wasn't able to stop himself from thinking of the possibilities of having more millennial beasts to bolster up his legion. William imagined himself standing on top of a hill overlooking a mighty beast army numbering in the hundreds of thousands. They were all part of his king's legion and allowed him to move unhindered across the land. If only it were true, William thought as he gazed at the magical beasts that were happily celebrating his birthday. Currently, William's legion was less than 1,000 strong. It was a mere drop in the bucket compared to the majestic scene that he had envisioned. However, someday in the future, he was sure that he could make it a reality. The party lasted until the evening. William had decided to retire for the night because he still needed to continue his journey in the morning. Also, Ash had tried the delicious wines that William had suddenly procured out of nowhere and became dead drunk because of them. She liked them all, but it didn't take long before she got drunk because of her low alcohol tolerance. William decided to take her back to the villa so that she could rest properly. Unfortunately, he underestimated the effects of the wines that he had purchased from the god shop. William would soon realize that it wasn't only Sir Nanos whose moods could switch without warning. That night, he would understand that a drunk mermaid was a very dangerous mermaid in more ways than one. Chapter 393, The Best Gift of All Part 2. William gently laid the drunken Ash on the bed and took off her shoes. After doing that, he took off his own and laid beside her. Will gently pressed his forehead against Diane's in an attempt to synchronize so they could enter William's spiritual world. The half-elf had just entered his sea of consciousness when a pair of arms wrapped around him and a pair of seductive eyes stared up at him. Will, do you? Heek love me? Ash asked. William marveled at the light blush that spread on Ash's cheeks, heightening her already beautiful features. I love you, William replied. I love you, too, Ash said as she kissed William's lips. William was quite surprised because usually it was him who initiated to kiss Ash on the lips. The beautiful mermaid would only kiss him on the forehead and cheeks, but never on the lips. Perhaps due to the effects of the wine, Ash had suddenly become bold and daring. At first, she started to kiss William's lips with small pecks. However, it then escalated to ravenous and passionate kisses, causing both of them to gasp for breath the moment their lips parted. Of course, this was not the first time that the two of them had kissed. What was different was that Ash was the one taking the lead and William was allowing his mermaid lover to do whatever she wanted. Seeing that William was not resisting her advances, Ash pinned him down on the blue sea that was the same color as her hair. Her hands suddenly ripped off his clothes off as if they were made of paper, which caught the half-elf by surprise. Fortunately, we are inside my sea of consciousness, William thought. William could easily create clothes inside his spiritual world, so he didn't mind having his shirt ripped apart. However, he just didn't expect that Ash had this side to her that she had never shown him before. Ash didn't know what William was thinking, nor did she care. She was busy kissing her significant other all over the place. The drunk mermaid kissed his forehead, his cheeks, ears, nose, lips, chin, neck, and didn't stop there. She had become a complete kissing addict after getting drunk, and her kisses were slowly going down towards William's lower half. William hurriedly stopped the drunken mermaid before she crossed the point of no return. He was afraid that his willpower wouldn't last long if little William was kissed by Ash, who seemed to be dead set on marking every inch of his body in her drunken state. Ash tried to resist William, but the half-elf was stronger than her. In the end, William had no choice but to hold her firmly in order to prevent her from waking the sleeping dragon that had already started to stir. Something Heek is poking me. You're drunk. You're just imagining things. William admonished the little guy who had woken up to poke their drunk lover. He took deep breaths, in order to clear his mind and prevent himself from eating the delicious fish that had landed on his plate. The minutes passed by before Ash finally settled down and laid on top of William. The half-elf didn't dare to let her go, and allow her to do anything she wanted anymore, because he was also close to reaching his limit. He drank a few cups of wine himself and his body had started to heat up due to Ash's sensuous actions. Will. Whom do you Heek love the most? Ash asked as she playfully caressed William's chest. Is it Wendy, EST, or me? Of course I love you the most, William replied. He was doing his best to not focus on the playful hand that was stoking the fire that was starting to blaze inside his chest. According to the goddess of lust, William must always focus on the lady in front of him and not think of other girls whenever he spends some quality time with them. She added that a lady would always want the man they love to say that they love them, no matter the situation. Really? Are you telling me the truth? Yes. Ash raised her head and gazed at her reflection on William's clear green eyes, which proved that he was only looking at her at this point in time. Well then, why don't you Heek prove it to me? Ash laid her head on William's chest once again, where the other half of her heart was located. Tell me Heek the name of the girl you love the most, and swear it upon Heek my true name. William's body stiffened when he heard the drunken mermaid's challenge. Ash was asking him to give her an honest answer with her true name on the line. This caught William completely by surprise and he was at a loss on how to properly respond to his drunk lover. The half-elf could feel Ash's warm breath as she breathed softly. Her soft and delicate hand rested over the jewel that was embedded in his chest. This was the half of her heart that she had given to William in order to prevent his spiritual world from collapsing completely. If William were to lie to her now, Wouldn't that be tantamount to stepping on her trust and the affection that she had given him? William took a deep breath, before finally making up his mind. Since Ash wanted to know the truth, then he would give it to her. This was also a form of love. Ash, I. Snore. William wasn't able to finish his words because the drunken mermaid had fallen asleep on top of him. Not to mention, she was even snoring loudly, which had never happened before. This just proved the potency of the wines that William had bought from the god shop. Since they were being sold there, their quality was superior to the common wines that could be found elsewhere. William held Ash's warm, and soft, body firmly in his embrace as he planted a kiss on her head. Although his feelings for the girl in his arms weren't as strong as his feelings for Belle and Wendy, they were starting to take shape. I know that you won't believe me, but this I swear is true, William said softly. I promise to love you, just as much as you love me. So, give me some time to fully show you just how much you mean to me. The corner of Ash's lips raised slightly into a sweet smile. Perhaps it was due to William's words, or perhaps she was having a good dream. However, one thing was sure. The hearts that were beating on both of their chests, were slowly, but surely, starting to beat as one. Chapter 394, Return to the Kingdom of Frisia. A swarm of flying ants entered the airspace of the capital of Frisia, but none of the defenders barred their way. Prior to her arrival, Princess Sidonie had written a letter and asked Priscilla to take it to the commander of the Kreator Empire, Prince Jason, who was currently commanding the city. After Prince Jason received the letter from his cousin, he personally went to meet her and tell her about the mission that was given to him by his grandfather, Emperor Leonidas. There had been a subtle change in Princess Sidonie's attitude and presence after she had left the Kirintar Mountains. She no longer hid her face behind a veil and allowed her beauty to be seen by all. The power of her charm had also increased twofold, which would turn average people into mindless slaves who would follow her every command. Naturally, Princess Sidonie held this power back, only allowing a tiny bit of her power to be released into the surroundings. Even so, it was still more than enough to make those with weaker willpower infatuated with her beauty. Prince Jason came prepared and was wearing many protective artifacts that decreased the power of charm spells. Even so, when he first saw Sidonie, he wasn't able to stop himself from drawing a deep breath because of her sensuous beauty. Princess Sidonie didn't care whether her cousin would be charmed by her beauty or not. For her, those with weak willpower were just meant to be used as cannon fodder in order to accomplish her goal, which was to make William see her as the greatest threat he was going to face. I've been warned by our spies that your beauty can bring down nations, Prince Jason said as he stared at the sensuous beauty in front of him. However, I didn't expect that they still failed to accurately describe how beautiful you truly are, cousin. Princess Sidonie's lips curled up into a sweet smile. In the past, she didn't like it when people flattered her because of her beauty, but after being firmly rejected by William, she lost a bit of her confidence. Hearing people affirm that she was beautiful once again sparked the flames that burned inside her chest, fueling her seductive powers to grow by the day. I already read the plans in the letter, but is it true that grandfather planned to make me the empress of the southern continent? Princess Sidonie inquired. I find this hard to believe. Prince Jason pressed his closed fist over his chest as he stared straight into the princess' eyes. This is what the emperor decreed, Prince Jason stated with pride. I swear upon my dignity and honor that there is no falsehood in his desire to make you the ruler of the southern continent. Before he set out on his journey, Prince Jason was still doubtful about why his grandfather decided to ask his distant cousin to become the ruler of an entire continent. Prince Jason would be lying if he said that he didn't have any complaints about his mission. However, all of those complaints vanished the moment he laid his eyes upon the most attractive lady he had seen in his life. As a prince of the Kreator Empire, Jason never lacked the company of beautiful women. He was also not a vegetarian. He had spent many nights with these beauties to quell his sexual desires. This was why he became enamored with the princess, who was also his cousin. In the Kreator Empire, it was not forbidden for relatives to get married. The royal family of the empire had a bloodline trait which made their offspring immune to any disability or genetic defect that came from marrying their relatives. There were also times when such practices were favored because countless powerful members of the royal family had been born due to this method. Although Princess Sidonie was unaware of the thoughts that were currently swirling inside Prince Jason's mind, she was able to sense the desire that had bloomed inside the prince's heart. Morgana giggled internally as she teased her other half about making Prince Jason their Mr. A Mr. is the counterpart of a mistress. I was tempted to use paramour, but decided to just make it Mr. to make things easier. Take note that this term is only viable to anyone linked to Princess Sidonie or Morgana. If you read the word Mr. in this story, it will not have the meaning of a male mistress unless the one saying it is Princess Sidonie or Morgana. Thank you, cousin, for your praise, Princess Sidonie replied with a smile that was sweet enough to rot anyone's teeth. I'm tired from my journey. Can you please escort me back to the capital? Prince Jason unconsciously drew in a deep breath before taking hold of his senses. Princess Sidonie's smile made his heart skip a beat and he had to use all of his willpower to stop himself from kneeling at her feet. It will be my pleasure, cousin, Prince Jason replied. Please follow me. The bronze dragon that the prince was riding led the way towards the capital. The flying ants returned to their formation with the flying carriage at the center. If Princess Sidonie's father, King Redmond, saw her right now, his heart would definitely be filled with pride. His daughter had managed to make a myriad beast her beast companion, which was something that not everyone could do. Only a handful of emperors and empresses that ruled the central continent had achieved such a feat, and none of them had been able to do it when they were only 16 years old. Princess Sidonie was warmly received by the Kreator army. The princess' little brother, Prince Carl, hugged his elder sister the moment she stepped out of the flying carriage. Morgana had already placed a spell on her other half-sibling to prevent Prince Carl from getting charmed by anyone. Both of them were born from the same mother, and Princess Sidonie, as well as Morgana, loved him very much. Don't leave me again, sister, Prince Carl said as he hugged his sister tightly. Princess Sidonie could feel her clothes becoming wet from the tears of her little brother. She affectionately patted the crying child's head as she assured him that she would stay in the capital for the time being. Prince Jason watched this scene and wished that he could swap places with the young prince. His desire to hold the princess in his arms burned deep inside his chest. The Princess of Frisia excused herself and dragged her little brother to her room. She didn't want the members of the Kreator Empire to witness Prince Carl's sorry state, so she decided it best to have a talk with him in private. Priscilla followed behind the princess since all of Sidonie's other attendants had been left in Ravenlord Citadel when she escaped. Both of them could only hope that they didn't suffer at the hands of the Crown Prince as he vented his anger due to the princess' escape. Princess Sidonie's goal was to rally the Kreator army and start her own conquest of the southern lands. Her first target was the Anisha dynasty where the Ant Queen resided. This was her first step in the master plan that she had prepared to ensnare the arrogant red-headed boy who had dared to reject her. A half-elf that dared to reject the most beautiful lady in the southern continent. Princess Sidonie vowed that the next time she met William, she would make him understand that he had made the wrong choice in not choosing her as his main lover. Chapter 395, I Don't Trust You. Head Prefect EST is gathering volunteers to evacuate the survivors on the outskirts of the kingdom. Spencer raised his head after reading the scroll that Dave had personally handed to him. Dave nodded his head. Right now, we are gathering volunteers from all over the kingdom to bring the less fortunate survivors to the capital. Of course, we understand that you are busy with managing your own duchy right now, so we will not force you to help us. Before Spencer could answer, the door of Spencer's office burst open as Wendy stormed in with an excited expression on her face. Is it true? Will has regained consciousness. Wendy walked straight towards Dave to demand an answer. She had always been thinking about her boyfriend ever since she left William to head to the front lines to protect their kingdom. Wendy had wanted to see him after she returned to the academy from the Ravenlord fortress, but William was no longer there. She felt sad when she learned that Ash had taken him to the northern regions while the war was underway. Ash had left a letter in the room they used in the academy just in case someone were to go there to try and see them while they were away. Because of the urgency of the situation, Wendy and Spencer returned to their duchy to supervise the rescue efforts for the survivors in their territory. Now that she knew that William was already awake, she wanted to be by his side as soon as possible. Yes. The commander is now awake, but he is not in the capital, Dave replied. Unfortunately, the commander has left the capital only leaving a letter behind. Dave explained the contents of the letter after EST angrily threw it on the floor after reading it. On that day, EST wanted to strangle the half-elf that had dumped all of the responsibilities onto him. If not for the fact that William had given him a valid reason for doing so, EST might have left the capital to hunt down the red-headed boy with a vengeance. In William's letter, he had mentioned that he would be traveling the Helan Kingdom, looking for strong allies to help them in their cause. William added that even with the forces they currently had, they would immediately be crushed by the Elven army who was busy consolidating their forces in the nearby Zealand dynasty. Because of this, EST reluctantly accepted his role as the temporary leader of the kingdom, assisted by the son of the Prime Minister, Brendan. Wendy sighed in disappointment because she had missed the chance to reunite with her handsome boyfriend. She felt a little envious of Ian because he was always by his side. However, she also understood that this was for the best. He just woke up and he's pushing himself once again, Wendy muttered softly as she placed her hand over her chest. I just hope that he takes better care of himself. I'll make sure to pamper him the next time we meet. Spencer and Dave looked at the love-struck lady who was already thinking of the handsome half-elf who was currently headed to the north. As Wendy's older twin brother, Spencer had developed a dislike for his knight commander. This was because he was very overprotective of her and didn't want her to hang around with dangerous people who might bring her harm. William was the very definition of someone who liked to court danger. For Spencer, this was someone that shouldn't be connected to their family, especially his twin sister who was currently pining for the half-elf whose current whereabouts were unknown. Dave, on the other hand, already knew that Wendy and William were in a relationship, so he didn't think her actions were out of the norm. In fact, he was very jealous of William because a strong, and beautiful, girl like Wendy was head over heels for him. He hoped that he would also find the love of his life, if he survived the war. Tell Head Prefect EST that we will send a few knights in training to the capital to assist in the rescue operation, Spencer said. I apologize in advance if their numbers are low. We are currently short in manpower. Big brother, how about? No. You're staying here. Wendy pouted, but didn't insist on leaving with Dave to the capital. She knew that their own duchy still had many problems and leaving her big brother behind would only increase his burden even more. In the end, she could only sigh in her heart. However, before Dave left the Armstrong duchy, Wendy had given him a handwritten letter to be passed to William. Dave promised that he would hand the letter to their knight commander as soon as they met each other. He still had many others to visit, so he didn't stay to enjoy Spencer's hospitality. Time was of the essence and many children were starving in places that were far beyond their reach. So, are you in, or are you out? William asked. After arriving in the north, he asked the system to find the whereabouts of the Titanic green-scaled trollhound that he had banished from the barony of Brantford. Are you telling the truth? The Titanic trollhound growled as it looked down on William. Of course. I wouldn't waste my time trying to find you otherwise. I still don't trust you. William crossed his arms over his chest as he gazed at the towering trollhound who was looking down on him. Then tell me, what should I do for you to believe me? William asked. The titanic trollhound pondered for a bit before answering William's question. Truth be told, it didn't trust humans because the ones that had made it suffer were humans. Although the one it was talking to was a half-elf, it was still wary of William's character. I have heard from the humans that the people of the Kirinter Mountains have a demigod watching over them, the titanic trollhound replied. I don't trust you, but I am willing to believe in a demigod. If he says that you can be trusted, then I will come with you. That's it. William raised an eyebrow. If you get to talk with the demigod, then you will join me in the battle against the organization. Yes. Do I have your word? Yes. The titanic trollhound nodded. If the demigod can vouch for you, then I will fight with you against the organization. Bear in mind that I won't become your subordinate. I don't want to serve anyone again. After the organization has been dealt with, we will part ways. William was half tempted to use one of his pocket cubes to capture the stubborn titanic trollhound, but in the end he didn't do it. Forcing it to become his subordinate would leave a bitter aftertaste, so he agreed with its proposal to only join him to fight against the organization. It's a shame that I can't count on it against the elves, but this is also a good compromise, William thought. Very well, let's go. Let's go meet the demigod of the Kirinter Mountains. That way, you will know that I am not lying. The titanic trollhound nodded. The members of its pack also had a vendetta against their captors, so they were itching to pay them back. All of them followed William as they made their way towards the first peak of the Kirinter Mountains where Takam was already waiting for their arrival. Chapter 396, Takam's Errand. William and the titanic trollhound, along with its pack, arrived at the first peak of the Kirinter Mountains. Just like always, the leader of the trollhounds had a unique dislike for humans. However, it still gave William a chance because the half-elf said that he was going to fight against the organization that was responsible for their torture and suffering. The half-elf thought that this was already in the bag since Takam and him were on the same page. However, what greeted him at the peak of the Kirinter Mountain was... Can you please repeat that one more time? William's eyes were almost bloodshot as he stared at the Oracle of the Kirinter Mountains. The Sovereign is currently taking a number 2, Olivia, the Oracle of the Kirinter Mountains, said with a calm expression on her face. His Excellency explicitly told me that he is not going to receive any guests until he is finished with his business. William almost laughed out loud due to anger after hearing the *T excuse of the demigod that refused to meet with him. Lady Olivia, do demigods take a dump? The corner of William's lips twitched as he used all of his willpower to stop himself from cursing out loud. What kind of *T excuse is that? Even if you kill me, I won't believe that a demigod takes a dump. Yes. Are you for real? Young Will, don't you know? This is general knowledge, Olivia stated as if it was a very obvious thing. She even gave William a weird look as if he had no common sense. The titanic trollhound stared at the red-headed boy with contempt as if mocking him for his lack of knowledge. This made William want to give it the middle finger because it had easily been hoodwinked by the straight-faced oracle who was in cahoots with the demigod she served. In order to get a second opinion, William transferred his consciousness inside his thousand-beast domain and asked Kasaganaga if demigods actually pooped. Are you stupid? Kasaganaga asked. How can a demigod poop? Something must be wrong with your brain. Come out with me for a second, William pleaded. Help me explain to the oracle and titanic trollhound that they are behind hoodwinked by Takam. The rainbow-colored anteater pondered for a bit before firmly shaking its head. There are rules between demigods. It is the rule of non-interference, Kasaganaga said with a serious expression on its adorable face. Since we are inside this demigod's domain, I can't just randomly come out because it would think my action was a declaration of war. Right now, I am not at my peak. Also my instincts are telling me that meeting this demigod in my current state is not a good idea. Although the chances are low, I don't want to risk giving it an excuse to capture me and lock me up. I just regained my freedom. There's no way I'm letting any demigod imprison me again. Kasaganaga was firm as it stood its ground. William could tell that it wouldn't go back on its word, so he couldn't expect any help to come from it. After that short discussion with Kasaganaga, William finally understood that Takam wasn't meeting him on purpose. Perhaps the demigod had a reason for doing so, but it made things difficult for William. Then, when will His Excellency finish his business? William had no choice but to compromise. Whatever sick joke Takam was playing, he decided to play along for now. This was to ensure that the titanic trollhound would join him in his fight against the organization. I don't know, Olivia shook her head. Sometimes, it takes weeks to months before His Excellency finishes his business. If you want to wait, you are welcome to wait on the peak of enlightenment. Is there no other way to communicate with him? William insisted. He only needs to talk to this wonderful trollhound by my side for a few minutes. It won't take too much of his time. Olivia frowned as if William's proposal was very difficult to achieve. At that moment, a scroll appeared in front of the oracle. The one who serves the sovereign of the Kirinter Mountain reads its contents before looking at William with a smile. His Excellency said that it will take a while for him to finish. However, he added that if you are in a hurry to meet him, you should read his letter first. William sighed as he took the letter from Olivia's hands and read its contents. He didn't know what the demigod was up to, but Takam had always been good to him, so he decided to just play along and see what was written in the letter. Dear little Will. If you are reading this letter, it means that I am currently busy with you know what. It will take a while for me to finish, so while you wait, why don't you visit the goblin crypt in the town of Hartlepool first? Clearing a low-level dungeon is not that hard. So, why don't you clear 2 goblin crypts at the same time? Make sure to press your father's keepsake over the dungeon core when you reach the last floor. Also, it might be a good time for you to raise the ranks of your army. I think I'll be done with my business after you have cleared the 2 goblin crypts, and raised 5 of your beasts to the centennial rank. Best of luck to you. Ta-com. William read the contents of the letter with a dumbfounded expression. First of all, he was surprised because Ta-com knew that there were 2 goblin crypts. Of course, William thought that the demigod was just teasing him. However, the words written on the letter were too precise to ignore. The next thing that confused him was the fact that Ta-com also knew about his father's keepsake, which was the Ring of Conquest. The last part about having 5 centennial beasts also made him painfully aware that he currently didn't have any beasts in his legion that had stepped into the centennial rank. This reminder was like a bucket of cold water poured over his head. William contemplated as he went over the information of the 2 goblin crypts that he had explored in the past. His own goblin crypt consisted of 20 floors, while the goblin crypt in the town of Hartlepool had 30 floors. William had already gained the floor map of the upper floors, so it was only a matter of time before he could clear this condition. He believed that with the current forces under his disposal, clearing the 2 dungeons simultaneously would be easy. Fine, William decided to take a step back and run Ta-com's errand first. He was also very curious about what would happen after he cleared the 2 dungeons at the same time. His instinct was telling him that this was not a random errand that the demigod was sending him on because he was bored. Could it be? William thought a possibility appeared inside his head. The half-elf looked at the Ring of Conquest which had once belonged to his father. It was the keepsake that his mother had given him when they parted ways, and it had remained with William to this day. Like the final piece of a puzzle falling in place, William clenched his fist as he looked in the direction of the Helan Kingdom. Although it was exhausting to travel back and forth between the Kirintar Mountains and the capital, he was willing to do it as long as he could gain the power and allies that would help him accomplish the task he needed to do. I just hope that my hunch is correct. William caressed the ring on his hand in anticipation. Chapter 397, This time, I will not let you fight alone. Because William couldn't prove that he could be trusted, the Titanic Trollhound didn't accompany him in his return to the Helan Kingdom. After resting for a day in the Great Chieftain's residence on the 3rd peak of Chivalry, and making sure that Brianna and Prince Ernest were doing well, William and Ash once again journeyed towards the Helan Kingdom. They planned to make a detour before going to the town of Hartlepool. Their destination? It was none other than the Armstrong Duchy. Although it didn't show on his face, William was very worried about Wendy. He had already seen EST, but he still hadn't seen his first girlfriend since he had woken up from his coma. Surprisingly, Ash even supported his decision. Her reasoning was simple. Wendy is your girlfriend, Ash said firmly. It's only natural for you to see her and lessen the burden in her heart. I'm sure that she's also very worried about your current condition. Because of this, they didn't waste time and traveled 4 days in order to reach the Armstrong Duchy, which had found some kind of stability amidst the hardships that they had faced in the first few weeks after the continental spell had descended upon the land. When the Lamisua flew over the Armstrong residence, the young knights immediately sounded the alarm that an intruder had arrived. Spencer and Wendy came hurrying towards the front doors with their spears firmly held in their hands. When Wendy saw the new arrival, she screamed like a little girl and ran in William's direction. Spencer, on the other hand, frowned, but he made a gesture for the knights to lower their weapons. Some of these young knights were the local trainees of their retainers, so they didn't know who William was. They just looked at him in envy when they saw their lady. Wendy jumped into his arms with tears streaming down her face. The beautiful lady wailed and pounded William's chest, calling him a cheater, a womanizer, and a playboy. A/N, excuse my French. William didn't care that they were being watched by many people as he cupped Wendy's face and kissed her lips. Spencer was very tempted to stab William's bum with the tip of his spear, just like the half-elf had done when he tried to capture the griffin, Lionheart, back in the whimsical forest. The young knights, who had a crush on Wendy, felt their hearts breaking as William kissed the apple of their eyes right in front of them. Although she was caught off guard by William's passionate kiss, the blonde beauty didn't fight back and even wrapped her arms around William's neck. The two kissed for a minute before reluctantly parting from each other. Ian watched this scene with a calm expression because she understood that Wendy was the first girl whom William had opened his heart to. She had a feeling that even if her seal had been broken earlier, she would have found it difficult to find an opportunity to get close to William and make him treat her as his lover. Sometimes, Ash even thought that William's current state was a blessing in disguise. If not for it, she wouldn't have had an excuse to give him half of her heart, which would automatically make him her partner for life. A/N, there are times when I have to switch pronouns when it comes to Ian, and EST. Bear with me as I find the right balance in order to make the transition smoother. After their public display of affection, Spencer urged the two annoying lovebirds to come inside the residence before the young knights cried a river for their loss. Ian followed a few steps behind William and Wendy in order to give both of them some privacy. The blonde beauty clung to William's arm like a leech. A leech that wouldn't let go even if one were to spray salt on her. Naturally, the half-elf enjoyed his girlfriend's affection and whispered words of love in her ear, making Wendy's face beat red. After arriving in the Duke's office, Spencer immediately asked William for his reason for coming to their territory. Naturally, William didn't hide his purpose for coming. I came to see Wendy before I continued my journey to gather allies that will help us resist the organization and the Elven invasion, William replied. We only have a few months to prepare, and I'm afraid that we won't have enough forces to stop them from their conquest. EST had already informed everyone about the foreign invaders that had arrived in their kingdom, the Elven race and the Creator Empire. However, between the two superpowers, the elven race's threat was more profound because the distance between the Helan Kingdom and the Zealand dynasty was not that far from each other. The only reason why the elves hadn't attacked yet was because they were busy consolidating the territories of the Zealand Kingdom and also focusing their efforts on building the teleport gates that would allow reinforcements from the Silver Moon continent to arrive in the southern continent. When William said that he planned to go to the town of Hartlepool in order to explore the Goblin Crypt, Wendy's and Spencer's expressions immediately turned grim. The twins had suffered terribly during their first dungeon expedition inside the Goblin Crypt. Although they had been captured, Wendy's fate would have been terrible if not for William's, and the other students in the academy, timely rescue. The Goblin Crypt gave the two of them a very bad memory and if possible, they didn't want to go there ever again. Do you have a reason for going there? Wendy asked. William nodded and explained the situation concerning Takam's condition. He didn't mention anything about the gigantic trollhound because he was not sure if this information would leak and reach the organization through different channels. It's better to be safe than sorry, William thought as he hugged Wendy who was seated beside him on the couch. Ian sat on the chair right next to them and focused his attention on eating the snacks that had been served to them. The constant travels had taken a toll on him and he just wanted to relax for the time being before accompanying William in his dungeon expedition. I'm coming with you. Everyone in the room glanced at the blonde beauty who was looking at William with a determined expression on her face. I'm coming with you to the Goblin Crypt, Wendy declared. This time, I will not let you fight alone. Whatever you plan to do, I will go with you. William frowned. He didn't come to the Armstrong Duchy to get Wendy to accompany him in his travels. He just wanted to let her know that he was safe then leave as soon as he could to travel to the town of Hartlepool. Wendy's eyes were very determined and William couldn't find a reason to prevent her from coming with him. Deep inside, he missed her company and also wanted her to be with him in his quest to gather allies from all over the Helan Kingdom. Spencer rubbed his forehead because he had already anticipated that his twin sister would do something like this. The Siskin shifted his attention to William and the latter met his gaze. Half a minute later, both boys nodded their heads in understanding. Although Spencer was reluctant to part with his sister, he knew that William would do his best to keep her safe. Although he disliked the red-headed boy, he had recognized his strength. He just hoped that the twin sister he cared about the most wouldn't suffer terribly as she followed the person she loved. Chapter 398, Conquering the Goblin Crypt Part 1. William found himself being used as a hug pillow by two beautiful ladies inside his sea of consciousness. They decided to stay for a night in the Armstrong Duchy, before going to the town of Hartlepool in order to start their dungeon expedition. I can get used to this, William thought as he held the two beauties in his arms. He listened to the soft, sleeper, breaths of the two girls that loved him as he basked in their warmth and softness. Ash's spiritual energy transfer was still in effect even when she slept. Wendy's magical powers traveled through her, before being transmitted to William's body as spiritual power. Both of them were nourishing his body and speeding up the recovery process of his spiritual world. For William, these two girls in his arms were very precious. He had long decided to do his best to make them happy and return the love they were showering him with in full. When Belle said that she would allow him to have 9 wives, he thought that she was kidding. Now that he was holding not one, but 2 girls in his arms, he started to realize that there might be some truth in the words of his star-crossed lover, who was still thinking about him from Earth. 9, William mused. There's EST so that's already 3. William recalled all the ladies that he had a close relationship with and felt a minor headache. Aside from his 3 lovers, there were several other girls that came to his mind. One of them was the Princess of Frisia who had openly declared that she wanted his babies. I should stop thinking about this. William sighed internally. He still had to deal with the problems at hand and had no energy to think about his future wife candidates. For the time being, he decided to just focus on his 3 lovers. In regards to the other 6 possible wives, he decided to cross the bridge when he got there. After breakfast, William, Ian, and Wendy wasted no time and teleported to the town of Hartlepool using the teleport gate in the Armstrong Duchy. It had been many months since their last visit, but Wendy still unconsciously flinched when she saw the entrance of the Goblin Crypt. Don't worry, William said as he firmly held her hand. I'll protect you. William cringed internally after he realized that he just said one of the cheesiest lines in existence. In the past, he would snort whenever he read this line in a light novel or heard it in TV shows. Why? Because all of them sounded unrealistic. He just didn't expect that he would be saying the same words in this lifetime. Thank you, Wendy replied as she returned a firm squeeze on William's hand to tell him that she was really fine. William nodded and closed his eyes. It was now time to form the teams that would explore the dungeons. Urchitu, along with the Minotaur race, would take care of the Goblin Crypt that was connected to the Thousand Beast domain. The half-elf was confident that the Millennial Beast would easily bulldoze through anything that stood in its way. As for William's own party, there was Ian, Wendy, Ella, and the goats. Psoglov, Kasaganaga, and the Circops monkeys also joined in for fun. Kasaganaga sat on top of Kronos, because the rainbow-colored anteater had become good friends with the denizens of the Thousand Beast domain. Aside from its hatred for the elven race, Kasaganaga had no problem getting along with anyone. Although it was not part of William's legion, it decided to accompany the half-elf during his war against the elven prodigies, who were just outside the Helan Kingdom's borders. William knew that with the lineup he had prepared for the 2 dungeons, a mere Goblin Crypt wouldn't be able to stop them. 10 minutes later. The goats ran straight towards the lower floors of the dungeon and ignored senseless killing. Since William had already acquired the maps, he just focused on reaching the lowest floors as fast as possible. The same thing was happening to the Goblin Crypt where Urchita was stationed. According to Takam, both dungeons must be conquered within 24 hours after setting foot inside them. The hobgoblin leader didn't even last 5 seconds after it appeared in the boss room. As soon as the boss landed on the ground, it received a mega kick from Ella which sent it slamming towards the wall head first. Ian hurriedly opened the chest and grabbed the pair of Windborn boots and stored them inside her storage ring. Last time, she had surrendered the Windborn boots to EST. This time, she wasn't planning on compromising. Even now, William still wore the boots that he had acquired inside the goblin crypt. They had an auto-size function and were very sturdy. Because of this, the elf didn't think about replacing them with other footwear, unless he was wearing the golden armor that was forged from the golden-scaled crocodile that attacked Lant when he was still young and powerless. Wendy didn't know the meaning behind the boots, and only thought that Ian was taking them in order to not waste the treasure chest. After that short interlude, the group traveled straight towards the 14th floor where the goblin shaman spawned. When they came across a party with a goblin shaman, William didn't bat an eye and immediately skewered it with a glacial lance. Although this creature, that had once terrorized him during his childhood, was no longer a threat to him, he still didn't want to take any chances and killed it on the spot. "Don't worry, I'll let you fight one later," William said as he held Wendy's waist. He knew that his lover had a vendetta against goblin shamans, but he was under a strict time limit. The half-elf was confident that he wouldn't need 24 hours to clear the dungeon. Even so, he didn't want to be careless so he dealt with the immediate threat before things got out of hand. An hour later, they arrived at the 20th floor where the second boss of the goblin crypt was waiting for them. This was the first time that William would see the boss on the 20th floor of the dungeon. William didn't want to admit it, but he had always wondered what the second boss would be like. Soon, the torches in the arena blazed and a 2-meter-tall goblin appeared in front of them. William raised his brow when he saw the boss that was flanked by 24 hobgoblins composed of shamans, warriors, and hunters. William's appraisal skill buzzed as the information of the boss appeared on his status page. Chapter 399, Conquering the Goblin Crypt Part 2. Goblin Chieftain. Dungeon Boss. Goblin Overlord. Threat Level, Class B, High. The Great Chieftain of the Goblin race is known for its wild and chaotic side. It is very accustomed to bullying those who are weaker than it and will often go on warring expeditions against other goblins in order to assimilate them into his tribe. The Goblin Chieftain also likes to pillage human villages in order to capture the women and young girls to serve as his tribe's broodmares. They are well known for being lustful creatures and have always been on the list of top 10 creatures that the adventurers should eliminate at all cost. With a guttural roar, the Goblin Chieftain charged towards William like a mad beast. It became jealous of William because there was one beautiful girl by his side. As a lustful beast, it wanted to capture the girl and have its way with her. William snorted and was about to fight the Goblin Chieftain head-on. However, he wasn't able to do that because Ian and Wendy, who stood by his side, had already charged at the Goblin Chief with their weapons drawn. Ian's sword whip and Wendy's spear collided with the double scimitars that the Goblin Chieftain was wielding. Ash transformed into her mermaid form at the same time that Wendy unleashed her magic. The two girls worked together in order to keep the monster at bay, while the rest of the goats cleared up the Goblin Chieftain's subordinates. William knew that Ash and Wendy were not fragile flowers that had to be locked up in crystal vases to be admired. Both of them were warriors, and they had their pride as warriors. The two girls were giving William a subtle hint, and the half-elf understood their intentions. "We will not just watch from the side and let you do all the fighting," Ash said internally as the sword in her hand transformed into a whip made of water. Wendy firmly gripped her spear as she prepared to use one of her powerful attacks in order to deal with the Goblin Chieftain who had entered a berserk state. "Watch me, Will. I'll show you what I can do." Wendy channeled her magic power to the tip of her spear and exchanged a glance with Ash before going in for the kill. Rain Cutter. Infinity Spear. The water whip in Ash's hand blurred as it lashed out towards the body of the Goblin Chieftain, leaving deep gashes in its chest. Wendy thrust her spear forward and several steel spikes embedded themselves in the Goblin Chieftain's body. Both girls were still not finished with their merciless combination and pummeled the berserk Goblin Chieftain over and over until it drew its last breath. Both girls were at the initial stages of the gold rank, while William was in the initial stages of the platinum rank. Originally, the two of them were only at the peak of silver rank. However, due to their desire to become stronger during the war, they trained hard and absorbed magic crystals in order to finally advance to their next rank. This happened while William was still in a coma and he was pleasantly surprised to see that girls had increased their fighting prowess. "Great job, both of you," William praised the two girls who were panting for breath. The Goblin Chieftain was a rank higher than both of them. But due to their combined efforts, they were able to neutralize its threat by bombarding it with spells that made it unable to utilize its strength to the fullest. Also, there was a certain red-headed boy who was using subtle dark magic spells to weaken the Goblin Chieftain without letting the two girls find out. As someone that had trained with Celine for many years, the boy had learned a few tricks from her. Oliver, who was hiding in William's shadow, nodded his head in appreciation. He had been with William many times to act as a bodyguard, so he was well aware of the red-headed boy's personality. His actions to help the two girls made Oliver realize how much William cared about them. The parrot monkey sighed in his heart and wished that his ward, Celine, was there to see how much the boy had grown. He was also starting to doubt if William was really the prince in the prophecy. At the beginning, Oliver wanted William to be the Prince of Darkness. Why? Because if that happened then he would definitely choose Celine over Celeste when that time came. However, after being with him for so long, he wished that it were not true. After all, in order to become the prince who wielded the power of darkness, William must allow himself to be corrupted by darkness and accept it wholeheartedly. Celine and the parrot monkey had already seen William's state when he had lost all hope for humanity. Both of them didn't want to see him like that ever again. I'll just let nature take its course. Oliver sighed for the second time. There's no use worrying about things outside of our control. Oliver watched as the two girls exchanged a high five before looking back at William with smug expressions on their faces. William smiled and looked at his two lovers with gentle eyes. The parrot monkey hoped that the time would come when someone would also look at Celine with eyes filled with love and affection. If William isn't the prince, then so be it, Oliver thought. However, if any other bastard prince dares to harm my mistress, I will rip him apart and feed him to the fishes. I don't care if he's the Prince of Darkness or Prince of Blackness. Anyone who makes Celine cry will die in my hands. It was still a few years before the prophecy was to be fulfilled. Until then, Oliver would watch over his prince candidate and see for himself if the red-headed boy, whom he had personally trained, would fall into despair and allow himself to be corrupted by darkness. Chapter 400, Boss Room Battle Part 1. We are now inside the room of the dungeon core. Urchitu's telepathic message echoed inside William's consciousness as he made his report. Understood, William replied. Stay there for the time being, we just finished beating the boss on the 20th floor. After finishing his short chat with Urchitu, William urged his team to step up the pace. After the continuous battles they faced in the Goblin Crypt, William's Quick-Shot Shepherd job class had increased its level and was now at level 16. They didn't focus on killing monsters, and prioritized going to the lower floors as fast as they could. Finally, when they reached the 30th floor, William felt that something was off. They didn't meet any goblins along the way as they headed towards the boss room. He was expecting staunch opposition from the monsters once they arrived on the last floor, but so far, nothing blocked their way, which made William, and the rest of his team confused. Stay alert, William reminded everyone as they delved deeper on the last floor of the Goblin Crypt. In time, they finally arrived at their destination. A 4-meter-tall golden gate barred their path. This was the boss room and the final hurdle in clearing the dungeon. William glanced at everyone in his group and they all nodded their heads in unison. Ian and Wendy held their weapons firmly and Psoglov had already summoned its clone. The Angorian ibexes and the Cercopes monkeys had also prepared themselves for the last battle inside the Goblin Crypt. William pushed open the gates and what greeted them was pitch-black darkness. Even with his dark vision, William couldn't see past 2 meters in front of him. He summoned his wooden staff and took a step forward. His party followed him inside with bated breaths. When the last Cercopes monkey had entered the boss room, the 2 golden gates immediately closed. Darkness descended upon the party for a brief moment before the torches hanging on the walls flared up one by one. William drew a deep breath when he saw the final challenge that he was about to face. Thousands of hobgoblins composed of warriors, hunters, shamans, berserkers, hobgoblin leaders, and a hobgoblin chieftain appeared before their very eyes. William raised his head to look at what seemed to be an elevated platform at the very back of the arena and saw a hobgoblin that was 2.5 meters tall. It held a jeweled bronze staff in its hand and its light green eyes glowed with power. William had fought a similar hobgoblin in the heavenly domain, but this creature in front of him was vastly different from the one he faced. It was as if it was more intelligent compared to other hobgoblins, which made William very wary. Immediately, he activated his appraisal skill to check the final boss that he needed to defeat in order to conquer the Goblin Crypt. Hobgoblin Witch Doctor. Contracted Monster. Humanoid. Threat Level, S, Centennial Low. Centennial Monster. Hobgoblin Witch Doctors are considered as one of the most powerful mages in the Hobgoblin world. They are dual-element casters which would be very hard to defeat unless you had protective gear that could resist curses and other mind-affecting spells. They are highly intelligent creatures that will use anything to their advantage. It is advisable to fight them with strong and experienced warriors who have fought against them in the past. This will increase the chances of your party beating this monster with minimal casualties. A contracted beast, William frowned. This was the first time he had seen a contracted monster acting as a leader of a monster army inside a dungeon. William was very curious to know how this happened, but he wasn't in the right environment to find answers. Right now, there was only one thing he needed to do and that was to fight. Ian, Wendy, eat the chocolate lollipops I gave you earlier, William ordered. The 2 girls didn't question William's order and immediately took out and ate the lollipops that they had stored inside their storage rings earlier. William summoned Stormacalla and firmly gripped it in his hands. Gate open! William shouted. Several portals appeared behind his back and Fenrir, the troll hounds, the rainbow birds, the blood eagle Scottaray, the centaurs, the crimson cavern wolf spiders, 5 black-winged panthers, and the supreme killer koalas appeared inside the dungeon. William summoned all the members of his King's Legion that were above rank C in this fight against the thousands of goblins that ranked from the peak of rank D up to the centennial rank. William's Quick-Shot Shepherd job class had 16 levels. Because of Gavin's blessing, each time the level of his job class increased, he would receive 3 skill points instead of 2. This gave the half-elf a total of 48 skill points which he used to max out some of the skills in his skill tree. Among the skills that were at their max level were Quick-Shot War Art. Requires 10 skill points to unlock. Active skill. Allow the Quick-Shot Shepherd to employ his own war arts. The maximum number of war arts that can be created is 13. Heroism. Requires 10 skill points to unlock. Passive skill. When members of the herd are fighting against opponents that are a rank or several ranks higher than them, all of their stats will increase by 50%. Shepherd's Blessing. Requires 10 skill points to unlock. Active skill. The shepherd may choose one blessing to bestow upon the entire herd. Each spell gives a corresponding plus 20 enhancement to their respective stats. Only one blessing can be active at a time. Ox's Strength. Feline's Grace. Hawk's Splendor. Wolf's Cunning. Turtle's Wisdom. Beacon of Hope. Requires 10 skill points to unlock. Passive skill. Every member of the Shepherd's Legion receives plus 50 enhancement to all stats. Herd Immunity. Requires 5 skill points to unlock. Passive skill. All members of the King's Legion gain all of the Shepherd's natural resistances. If the Shepherd has an immunity to status ailments or diseases, all members of the herd would share this immunity. The 3 remaining skill points were added to his Beast Taming skill. Beast Taming. Skill level, 3/5. Active skill. Throw an orb of light to any beasts that can be tamed. The chances of taming will increase if the beast is weaker than the Shepherd. The chances of taming will increase if the beast has a good impression of the Shepherd. The chances of taming will increase if the beast is in a weakened state. Only applicable to herd-type beasts. Ox's Strength. William chanted and the members of his King's Legion suddenly had their strength stat increased by 20 points. This skill was only supposed to work for herd-type creatures. However, David and Issei worked together to upgrade the skill in order to allow William to buff his entire King's Legion, instead of limiting it to the members of his herd. The collaboration of the two gods allowed William to make all the empowering spells in his skill tree to work with the members of his King's Legion as well. Another skill that had received an upgrade from the two gods, was the Beacon of Hope that increases all the stats of William's Legion by an additional 50 points. The herd immunity was also another skill that made William's King's Legion very impressive. Since the half-elf had powerful resistances against dark magic and mind-affecting spells, the members of his legion also benefited from this. Last, but not the least, was the heroism skill. This passive ability was probably one of the most amazing skills in William's Quickshot Shepherd job class. This skill boosted all the stats of the members of his King's Legion by 50%. What did that mean? It meant that his already strong army would receive an additional boost if they were facing an enemy that was stronger than them. In this case, the Centennial ranked monster they were facing counted as a monster stronger than them. But, aside from this 50% boost, there was also an additional boost that came from his basic Shepherd job class. His first skill, Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, gives an additional plus 10 to all stats to the member of his legion. His other stat boosting skill, Way of the Shepherd, gave a 20% increase to the stats of the members of his King's Legion as well. A/N, to give an example, the stats of Kronos, who is one of the team leaders of William's herd, would have these stats once all the buffs are applied. Name, Kronos. Race, Angorian War Ibex. Level, 40. Health points, 47,600/47,600. Mana points, 9,350/9,350. Strength, 101, plus 207. Agility, 158, plus 213. Vitality, 80, plus 158. Intelligence, 50, plus 137. Dexterity, 40, plus 130. Due to the additional buffs, Kronos had jumped from a Class C beast to the initial stages of a Class A beast. This incredible skill lineup would make any member of William's King's Legion wolves in sheep's clothing. The stronger members of William's Legion also received these buffs, which made them more formidable. Psoglov had entered the pseudo-centennial rank category due to the massive boost in its own stats. The demonic dog laughed out loud as he faced the thousands of hobgoblins as if they were 5-year-old kids waiting to get spanked. William and the hobgoblin witch doctor glared at each other before giving the order to attack. The two sides collided and the blood of friends and foes alike stained the floor of the boss room in a dark red hue.